All right, let's call the meeting to order. The first item is Stephanie.
So, good evening, everyone. Your button. No, I need to turn it on. Good evening, everybody. Stephanie Holloway, Deputy CEO at Placer County here in the Tahoe City office. Welcome to the public to our joint meeting tonight. Just some housekeeping before we get going. We do have a couple of informational items for you tonight. The first one, specific discussion on our peak winter visitation and traffic congestion. We are going to facilitate some questions for the staff, for the MAC. We are also doing this hybrid, as you know. So in the room, you will have the opportunity for there's two cards at the front here. The yellow card, we ask if you have a question that you would like us to answer, that you fill out this card, and we'll be collecting those and addressing those, facilitating that. And then also if you have a suggestion or a comment for us, the blue card, these will be really helpful. We'll be capturing and collecting these and using them in the future. So I will also mention we have an online survey. We'd like to collect just some feedback. It's a tool for us tonight only. There's a QR code here, and we have it in the presentation, but also if you want to scan the QR code in the back. So for those of you online, we will have it available. The QR code is in the presentation when we get to that item. So just a couple questions, should be a pretty easy survey. For those online, because you don't have access to these cards, there is a free form field at the end of the survey if you wanted to ask a question or provide us with a comment. So we're going to have the results of that survey, those questions, at the end of the presentation for you all. So we'll summarize those. And then, like I said, we'll be facilitating a discussion on these questions that we receive as well. So I think that's the logistics we wanted to just make sure we opened with tonight.
So did everyone get the blue and the yellow cards when they walked in? If not, can someone from the county hand them out to anybody who's got their hand raised? So if you haven't gotten those, raise your hand and someone will come and give you the cards. All right, so we'll do MAC and RAC member introductions.
Gerald Herrick, Truckee side of Placer County.
Megan Shalimi, Kings Beach.
Russ Hanson, Tahoe West Shore.
Rebecca McFadden, Tahoe City.
I'll go after it comes back to me.
Don Folda, Alpine Meadows.
Catherine Hill, Tahoe Vista.
Gene Roder, North Star.
Okay. Keep going. Oh.
That's it. We're out. Back to you.
Maggie Stakely, Kings Beach, and I wanted to use my introduction to just take a moment to make a comment about the RACs and the MACs. Learning from previous experience when we've had this many people in the room. Sometimes this is a new meeting for some of you, but I see many friendly faces and familiar faces. So the RACs and the MACs are a appointed committee appointed by the superintendent, the supervisor, and we hear information items like we're hearing tonight. We occasionally hear action items and make some sort of recommendation that the Board of Supervisors then takes into account. And we hear issues that affect our local regions or municipalities. In this case, we have a joint meeting of the Olympic Valley and North Tahoe MACs and RACs tonight because the issues that we'll be talking about are spanning both of our MACs. And as we led with earlier, only information items. We won't be taking any votes on action items tonight. So I wanted to use my introduction space to just give a little bit of that grounding, and I'll hand it over to my colleague, David.
So I'm David Stepner from Olympic Valley, and my other MAC members don't have microphones, so please stand up and introduce yourselves.
Lange, Olympic Valley MAC.
That's it? Okay, so the next item was to designate a chair for this meeting. That's been done. The next item is approval of the February 9th, which is today's special joint RAC-MAC agenda. Is there a motion? Does anyone want to make any change to the agenda? All right, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I move to approve the February 9th special joint agenda.
Thank you. Second? We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? I don't know if we have a quorum. We don't have a,
So that was one for NTRAC. Now we need one for Olympic Valley.
huh?
Those are both NTRAC.
Those were both NTRAC members, so
Yeah.
that counts as our motion. And does Olympic Valley now need to make a separate?
But
Okay.
Olympic Valley doesn't have a quorum.
Thank you.
Bookkeeping. All right. So all in favor? I think we did that. We did the vote. Approval of the November 15th special RAC-MAC meeting minutes. I have no record of such a meeting, so I have no idea. So did people review it? And if they did, could we have a motion to approve the November 15th minutes?
Is that date correct, or was this our November? I thought we had an in-person joint meeting more recent. Sure.
Let's table it.
Good, because I was sent a design review minutes. Okay, so we're tabling that item. So the next one is reports, supervisor report and community reports.
Hi there, and this is awkward with this room, but thank you all for being here. So I will try to talk to the MAC, to the staff, and I'll just rotate in circles. Like I'm being a good grandmother these days with a toddler. The only report I wanted to give tonight, because I think everybody's here to talk traffic, so I'll be talking again on that, but I wanted to let everyone know that I've made a nomination for my planning commissioner for District 5. I had 10 applicants from all over my district, and I have made a nomination. I'll be going forward to the full board on Tuesday, and that is Mark Watts. Mark lives in Auburn, but also has a home here in Tahoe Vista, and is a transportation consultant. Think he's a good choice to add depth and knowledge to our planning commission. And he's been the chair of our North Auburn MAC for some time and done an excellent, excellent job. So anyway, just wanted to make that known. It was an excellent, amazing group of individuals who did put in their names, and I interviewed them all with one of our other planning commissioners. And I want to find spots for everybody. There's a lot of people who want to participate, and we want them to. So that's my only report.
Anybody from any community organization that wants to make a report? I see one person.
Make it green. All right. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, council members. Familiar faces. My name is Mike Geary. I'm the general manager of the Olympic Valley Public Service District. Just with some quick updates. I'll be quick because I know we're here to talk about something else. I wanted to highlight some of the district's fuels management and wildfire preparedness efforts. The district recently completed a community wildfire prevention plan with our neighbors in the valley, and looking for approval from the different entities that will have a chance to take a whack at it, including the county. We did get a $540,000 grant to do some fuels reduction on the north ridge of Olympic Valley, on the east end of the valley. We got a total of $69,000 worth of grants to do some fuels reduction at the S-turns on Olympic Valley Road as well, and that's on the south side of the road as you're driving into the valley. We're excited about the Forest Service Five Creeks project. We'll be treating approximately 6,000 acres between Olympic Valley and Truckee. Another project that's in the planning phases, the Alpine Meadows Olympic Valley Fuels Reduction Project. That's 1,000+ acres that it's in NEPA planning phase right now. We're pursuing grants for some defensible space and home hardening efforts, and continue to sponsor Green Waste Days, Chipper Days, that's new this year, and Green Waste Only Dumpster Rebate Program. Along the lines of our fire department news, I will announce the retirement of our fire chief, Alan Riley, later this summer. So we'll be looking for a replacement for him. On the water side, we're happy to announce that our board just approved a 6-year review and report for our Olympic Valley Groundwater Management Plan. Allows us to currently put our efforts towards what we call a Water Management Action Plan, which is the Valley's drought response plan. Allows us to look at indicators to initiate water conservation measures a little bit earlier than the late dry summer months when water levels are actually low in the aquifer. Did a recode on the west tank, about a 1.1 million gallon tank on the west end of the valley, and we're prepping for our Zone 3 tank recoat this summer. We're working on an emergency intertie with the Mutual Water Company in Olympic Valley, and a pressure zone project. We're replacing all our meters in the valley as well, and some random water line replacements and new construction. Thank you very much.
Following on what Mike said, I'd like to acknowledge the generous support of Palisades in donating money to fund the NEPA study in support of that 1,000-acre work in Alpine Meadows and Olympic Valley. We got a grant from Truckee Tau Foundation, but there was $180,000 that had to be raised locally, and it was raised. We did meet it. So the environmental study, the NEPA study, can proceed. So again, thanks to Palisades. Any other community discussion?
Good evening, Chairman, committee members. I'll be really brief. On behalf of the North Tahoe PUD, thanks for squeezing into this room. We've got our rec program with the kids' martial arts and the adult art in the other rooms. So thanks for squeezing in. The rec program in Kings Beach is alive and well.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on. The next item is public comment. Is there anyone in the public who would like to make a 3-minute comment on something that is not on the agenda, which means it's not related to traffic, World Cup, or the roundabout? Come up and introduce yourself.
And I have some copies here for NTRAC, if I can hand them off to somebody. Hi, thank you for letting me speak, and so glad to see you guys here. My name's Billy Johnson, and I'm a KB local, and I had sat on as a team member of the KB Vision Plan and the Area Plan. So I'd like to read this in. Dear NTRAC, please find an attached petition and comment excerpts that was submitted to the Board of Supervisors on February 6, 2018, when they awarded the contract for taxpayer-owned town center properties. This is the petition, and there was 800+ signatures at the time from the locals. The Kings Beach Town Center property, owned by Placer County, purchased with public funds, and located in the heart of Lake Tahoe community of Kings Beach, is currently for sale by the county. To date, the local community has not had an opportunity to weigh in with regard to the submitted purchase sale agreement or the plans outlined by those who intend to develop the property. The Placer County Board of Supervisors will vote to award the purchase sale agreement to San Diego-based Clark Katina Group for redevelopment of the Kings Beach Town Center property at their Auburn meeting on Tuesday, February 6, 2018. By signing, you've added your voice to request that the Placer County Board of Supervisors delay the purchase price sale agreement proposed by C.W. Clark at their meeting on February 6, 2018, and allow time for community engagement. Request that county staff demonstrate how they have engaged community members in the selection process. Request that county staff describe how they plan to generate community support for the project proposed developer and the project they put forth. Request that the county staff publish proposal requirements, evaluation criteria, and identify stakeholders who will be making selection decisions based on the community. Allow the local community the opportunity to weigh in on the purchase, sale, and redevelopment proposals prior to contracting. It is critical that only selected projects demonstrate Kings Beach vision plan, compatibility, revitalization of the community, environmental gains, and retention of the community character. I'm sharing this to demonstrate that we did not have community input and transparency 5 years ago when the developer was selected. We have not had a seat at the table when the new developer was announced, and our town hasn't been impacted negatively by the condition of these properties in town since the county purchase in 2009. Now the project's stalled because it needs amendments to the area plan to move forward. Those continuous amendments are holding up the rest of the beneficial amendments that would help housing, small business, and local improvement immediately. A project that fits our vision plan, approved 2013, and area plan 2017 could move forward more easily. Both these documents were published prior to the contract on the property, so the requirements were well known to the developer. When the county and the community work together, we can do great things, and we have recent success, like the downtown sidewalk project. It's hard not to wonder if the community was involved, if we would not be moving people into new housing downtown right now instead of being stuck only in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. We have some people in the ether that would like to make public comments. I would ask those people to limit their comments to 3 minutes, and also to limit your comments to things that are not on the agenda, which means they should not be related to the traffic or special event or the roundabout. So we still have someone inside?
Yes.
Again, 3 minutes.
Okay, let me know when to start. Thank you for letting me speak. Jim Gardner, Kings Beach resident. I've been here for 40 years or so. Parking enforcement in Kings Beach and Placer County. We have some one-lane roads due to parking and illegal snow dumping in the streets of Kings Beach, as well as probably other parts of Placer County. There's one lane on Salmon Avenue due to no place to put snow from the Kings Beach Trailer Park.
Get to the microphone a little better.
Hear me a little better? Okay, sorry. There's one lane on Salmon Avenue. There's a trailer park, Salmon and Brook Avenue. They put all their snow in the street or in other people's property because they have no place to put snow. There's one lane of snow. I own a property just past the trailer park, so all the snow goes in their driveway when the plows come. Condition of Brook Avenue next to this same trailer park is almost impassable due to the road conditions and illegal parking. Many cars have been abandoned or parked on the right-of-way for extended time. Some vehicles haven't been moved for months. There's a boat on a right-of-way in Rainbow Avenue. It's been there for 3 years. We have only one parking enforcement officer for all of Placer County. Placer County Sheriff's Office, CHP, say to call each other agency. They don't want to enforce the laws. We have only one parking, I would like to suggest that Placer County Code Compliance Department take over the parking enforcement for the county for the winter, as they do in the summer. Also, why is the Kings Beach off limits for parking enforcement in the summer? I did talk to an officer on Speckled Avenue near the Speedboat Beach and asked him why he doesn't go to Kings Beach for enforcement, and he said it was off limits. He can't come down here. In closing, I would like to get the different agencies, Code Compliance, Placer County Sheriff's Office, CHP, Parking Enforcement, to give a presentation and answer questions from the public regarding the parking enforcement for a future meeting. And last but not least, backing up Bill. I did send a letter to the Placer County supervisors asking about the same Kings Beach project, the Clark property, and, you know, I never received a response. I do have the letter. I would like to give you a few copies, and maybe we can get some, you know, input. Thank you for listening.
Jim, if you want to.
Put them here?
Make sure we get them and then we'll pass them around. Thank you.
Do I have some more time left, or? Just kidding.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Public comment? All right, so let's go to the people on Zoom. Who's watching that?
Back there at the back.
Back there. How's this supposed to work?
Huh? I'm asking her to unmute, but she's not unmuted. Okay. You can ask her on the mic. Yeah, ask Angela. Angela, we need you to unmute on your Zoom screen and provide your comment. We see your hand up. Angela, can you unmute? Angela, we can't hear you. We might have to come back. We might have to come back to you. Is there anyone else with their hands up? Jeremy, do you want me to call their names out? Kathy, can you unmute?
Hi there.
Hi.
I've unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Hi there. I'm Kathy Astromoff, homeowner at Chamberlain's. Good to see everybody in the room today. Hello. I wanted to comment briefly and bring this group awareness to the Homewood Mountain Resort plans. The developer's publicly stated plans for the property recently differ in very material ways from the master plan that TRPA approved in 2011. One of the most significant changes that we should all be aware of is that the developers have stated that the resort ski area will be closed to the public. And passes and skiing will only be available to homeowners at Homewood. We think this is absolutely ridiculous. We're asking TRPA to reverse this, and we're encouraging all of our neighbors in the North Shore and also in the Olympic Valley to help us maintain this awesome public facility. More relevant for today's meeting, the approved plans for workforce housing for the resort and for the housing there are utterly inadequate for the kind of staffing that resort is going to need, which means that people who work at Homewood will need to, even more people, first of all, because it'll be a full resort, and they'll need to commute from South Shore and from Truckee and from Reno and from where all local people commute to come into the valley today. That's obviously going to exacerbate the problem that you are all considering in this meeting. We're asking the regulators in the room to please regulate and make sure that this problem is solved with the developer. And we're asking all interested parties in the room to please reach out to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. There's more information available on this matter at homewoodresort.com. That's homewoodresort.com. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, Ann Nichols.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, hello. Good evening. Yeah, so maybe you've heard. Palisades sold 19,000 tickets on the 28th. Altera in 2019 sold nearly 1 million passes. Vail sold 2.1 million Epic passes. We are over the tipping point right now. We're totally in trouble right now. So the only ones that don't seem to get this are Placer County, the TRPA, the Prosperity Center, and a few other of the myriad groups that are trying to save Lake Tahoe. So we really need to get into this, and more and more and more is not the solution. Big development is not the solution, and really large, high buildings are not the solution. We need these big businesses to build their own workforce housing. You know, like the ski areas, the PUDs, the college and incline, the IVGID, you know, why should we have to ruin our communities with high buildings to do this? We can really get this done if we think in a different manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, Chris Bennett.
Again, I remind people to please limit their comments to things that are not on the agenda.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Chris Bennett in Tahoma, California. I'm here to second Kathy's motion about the concern over Homewood Mountain Resort and the changes. I've been following this development since it was in its, I guess, infancy stages, 2011. I am also concerned about the pivot that this entire project has now completely changed. From its original consideration to the community to going in the exact opposite direction of privatization. This personally really feels like a classic bait and switch. They got everything approved, they got in line, and they've completely changed their mind on what they wanted this resort to be, with including removing the public lands and use for the community. I would appreciate it here if this could be considered and looked at and reviewed again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next is David Wall.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for my time. I too here for Homeward, and really the only thing I have to add from what Kathy and Chris just said was I agree with everything they just said, but also one of the things that we're trying to do in Tahoe right now is reduce traffic. And the current plan now to take Homewood private would require all of us on the West Shore. I'm here in Chamberlain's. All of us in the West Shore now to ski at Palisades or Alpine or someplace other than Homewood, which we just increased traffic. And that's one of the things we're trying to do, because we all know the impact that traffic has on the lake. That's it. They already did a good job of explaining everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, David. The next is Doug Flaherty.
Thank you, members of the committee. Based on considerations connected to the TRPA 2012 Regional Plan, the Tahoe Basin Area Plan, TBAP, EIS-EIR was adopted by Placer County in 2016, over 6 years ago. The TRPA Regional Plan, EIS-EIR, was adopted in 2012, 11 years ago. According to Placer County website, the Placer County General Plan, EIS-EIR, was adopted in 1994, 29 years ago. The currently far-reaching proposed TBAP increases in height, density, and coverage amendments seek CEQA statutory and categorical exemptions, which are going to happen. Based on significant changing information and circumstances since 1994, 2012 and 2016, and the fact that the CEQA categorical exemptions are not permitted connected with the current TBAP proposed amendments, Placer County must provide a substantial cumulative impact EIS-EIR to the 1994 General Plan, the 2016 TBAP, including the currently proposed TBAP height, density, and coverage amendments, and TRPA must provide a supplemental EIS-EIR to the 2012 Regional Plan. Based on substantial changes, new information, and circumstances noted below in my written documentation I submitted today, since the 2016 situation alone, self-evident adverse cumulative effects and impacts have adversely affected Lake Tahoe's environment, equilibrium, and harmony. This includes cumulative changes affecting the relationship between the Lake Tahoe Basin's built environment, man's environment, and the natural environment, including adverse impacts on Lake Tahoe water clarity. Critically important based on witnessed self-evident Lake Tahoe wildfire evacuation events and winter peril public safety occurrences leaving motorists stranded. And without adequate evacuation, all supplemental EIS/EIRs must be provided to include a workable public safety wildfire evacuation and winter weather public peril
Mr.
assessment. Thank you.
Flaherty, Mr. Flaherty, you need to wrap up your comments?
I said thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I was talking over you. Thank you, Doug. Angela, one more time, can you unmute? I think you're our last public commenter at this point. Angela, it looks like you've unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I just wanted to third and fourth Kathy's motion about the Homewood. The other commenters have actually already presented my viewpoint, so showing up in support at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Okay. Okay.
Anybody?
We
Oh,
have
there's one more?
Louie and Kristen Fielding. Do you want to unmute and make your comments?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. I'd like to comment on Homewood again, and specifically elements of the EIR that the revised plan is not consistent with. The background and history in the EIR describes the TRPA Community Enhancement Plan as adopted in 2018. And specific elements of that include create and enhance mixed-use community centers, enhance community character in town and tourist centers, encourage a mix of quality housing options, tourist accommodation options, and comparable commercial uses that will serve the local population and tourist population. It goes on and on. There's several elements that are in Homewood's EIR that their revised plan from what JMA has publicly stated is in complete opposition to and will not provide any of these benefits. So I think that, in addition to the other statements that what Homewood is planning is, so far outside of their EIR that this permit should be suspended until it can be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? Okay, we're going to move on. There are no action items, and so we move on to item number 9 on the agenda, which is information items. And I'll turn it over to the county.
Great, thanks. And David, I'm going to start out and welcome everybody again. And thanks for being here tonight, and to our Macs and to our panelists and speakers. For those of you I haven't met, I see a lot of familiar faces, but there's always new faces. I'm Cindy Gustafson. I am the county supervisor for the 5th District of Placer County, and I've been in this seat for just over almost 3 years now. Seems like a lot longer, but 3 years. And before that, I've lived in the community for 37 other years, doing other things, including 27 years at Tahoe City PUD. So. Long-time local, and I want to see a raise of hands of how many of you are angry about the traffic. Okay, I'm no surprise here. We thought we would catch pretty much everybody. We are well aware. We are all well aware of the issues we have with traffic, and all of us have been subjected to delays and things. I did want to give you just a bit of our hope for tonight. So one, we want you to learn what we have been doing, what everybody has been working on. Two, we want to let you know about what we're planning for the future, what we are already working on to try to address these issues in the future. And three, we want to get your suggestions and ideas of what we do from here. This is not about us knowing all and telling all. It's about working together as a community to solve these problems. And we have a lot of great partners that have been working on all of that. We've made a lot of investments in transportation efforts. Those of you who have had the chance to know me and work with me know that I've been working on transportation issues for almost all of my 40 years up here. Whether it was bike trails or sidewalks or roundabouts or many of the other efforts, and certainly supporting TART and now TART Connect as opportunities. So I've had an opportunity to do that as both a volunteer and as a professional, and now I get this other hat to wear as supervisor. But I want you to know how committed I am, and I think our whole board is, to supporting transportation solutions here in the area. As a small community, we've made a lot of investments. Multi-millions of dollars have gone in, many of them raised because of speakers you're going to hear from tonight, to invest in our communities. But with all of that, I wanted to share some numbers to put in context what we see as the tide that's rushing toward us. And that is, first off, the receding tide is our population. Our population in eastern Placer County has shrunk by 28% since 2000. And I know people shrug at that. That's full-time census tract for our whole region. We have more second homeowners, we have more visitors, but we don't have more full-time population. Our drive-up region from Reno since 2000 has increased by 42%. And since 2000, Sacramento alone has grown by 31%. So that puts about 1.8 million more people in drive-up zone to the Sierra than we had when I was really involved in boots on the ground trying to get projects done. So I wanted to share those numbers. I didn't get the numbers for the growth in the Truckee community, but since I've lived here, Truckee has also grown significantly and is a vibrant town. That wasn't the case when I first moved here, and many of you remember those days. So our demand is more than ever. And it shifted our traffic patterns, because in many articles, I went back and was reading articles. It's fun to be a little bit of a historian. Tahoe City was the focal point of many efforts on traffic congestion 30 years ago. Now that is all shifted, and we see it up Valley, we see it up 89 and 267 and in the Truckee area. So we know traffic changes, patterns change, and we have to be nimble, but transportation systems aren't as nimble as we'd like them to be. So with that, I wanted to share a little bit and turn this over to another gentleman who's worked with me for all of those 33 years or 38 years or however many years we worked on this. I was on the very first MAC. I was appointed to be on the very first MAC. And during our Tahoe City community plan, we said, hey, we've got a traffic problem. What are we going to do? And we said, we need to think about this as a resort triangle. And we started with the concept that we're a triangle that's united, that is a regional solution. And with that, we went on to bring a RUDAT team here, a group of experts from around the country who recommended we form a TMA. How many of you know what the TMA is? Well, not as many hands. The Truckee North Tahoe Transportation Management Agency. We can go to that slide. And please fill out this survey while you're listening to all of this. And I'm going to turn this over to Steve Teixeira, who was the founding board chair of that organization, and I got to work with side by side, and Steve has been volunteering in this area for all of those years. So, Steve.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor, and good evening, everyone. I am Steve Teixeira. I wanted to say hello, special greeting, and thank the members of the North Tahoe Regional Advisory Committee and the Olympic Valley Municipal Advisory Committee. You volunteer your time to help make decisions in our community, and we really appreciate your efforts. As Cindy said, about 33 years ago, we had a similar dynamic in the community. And, you know, patterns change, things change. You hit the bug here, there's another bug over there, you have to keep moving around. And so, but we had a similar point in time, energy like in this room, where people said, we can't handle all this traffic. And who do we turn to? Who's going to solve this problem for us? Well, as Cindy said, a team from the American Institute of Architects came in, we brought them in, and they said they spent 4 days here, they read all the materials, and they produced a report. And one of the things that came out of that report was basically them saying, you have to come together and solve the problem. You have to be the voice that speaks to all the agencies. You know, there was no one agency, not TRPA, not the county, not Nevada County. Truckee wasn't even a town yet. You know, nobody's got this. You have to have it. And so that was the impetus for forming the Truckee North Tahoe Transportation Management Association. And we tried different things. Like, nimble, that's a key word. So in those days, Tahoe City was the point. So we did a 3-lane program in Tahoe City, much like they have in Olympic Valley now. We tried bus programs. We tried, we actually got out and did traffic management ourselves until Caltrans said, you don't have permits to do that. Get off the road. But, you know, we were pushing to say, hey, if we can't do it, you need to do it. And the key was that it's all different people from all different parts of our community, the Resort Triangle, who were saying it together. And frankly, then they had to listen. And so I think it's important to revisit this history, that we've done things. We went and lobbied for federal money, for state money, you know, Fanny Bridge Project, all kinds of different funding sources. And when we speak together as a region, you know, we're pretty tough, and it's hard to ignore us. And so my plea for all of you tonight, and we're all frustrated, but let's turn the frustration into action. So you can search Truckee North Tahoe Transportation Management Association, or you can go straight to tntma.org. You can subscribe to the newsletter so that you can get regular updates. You can join as a member, because we're a nonprofit community organization. There's a 15-member board of directors. We have a West Shore seat that's open right now. And you can come to monthly meetings, whether or not you're a board member. You can still participate. So I urge you to go to that site and to be part of the excitement, to where when something comes up, we come together and go with Caltrans, Nevada DOT, Placer County, Nevada County, Town of Truckee, TRPA, Tahoe Transportation District, speak with one voice. The other thing I would just say is these things do take time. Transportation is not a quick fix. If you're looking for a quick fix, it's not transportation. But what does count is perseverance, staying with it over time. And I've stayed with it over time, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Like Cindy said, I was a founding board member, was on the board for 22 years, and since then I've been a consultant to it. It's a great group, dynamic, energetic. I urge you to at least check out one meeting, subscribe to the newsletter, but it's really a passion, and it should be a passion for all of us to help solve these problems. So thanks, Cindy, for the invitation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for all your efforts, Steve. And so again, just pointing out a couple more issues for all of you to remember, that part of the additional 2% in TOT was raised through the efforts of that group and our area plan teams to get 2% money back into our infrastructure up here and get control of it here locally. That was done back in 94, 95, and that has amounted to a lot of funds for a lot of projects in our region. The Board of Supervisors has also instituted an investment policy that's helped bring more revenue and more opportunities for funding up here, and I'm proud to be part of that now in this situation. And then formation of the TBID, which has been critically important to augmenting the amount of money we have and resources we have as a community. That's overseen by the North Tahoe Community Alliance. And that has helped us. And if we go to the next slide, I think we have some of the projects that have been done with the 2%, with the state and federal funding we've gone after, a lot of bike trails, millions of extra dollars into our TART system, more than any other district in the, or jurisdiction in the basin. Investments in TART, in the micromass transit through the T-bids in both Olympic Valley and the regional T-bid. And you see some of the other projects that we've invested money in. So we have opportunities, we've done a lot, but we also have a long ways to go. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Holloway to start getting into the nitty-gritty. But thank you again for being here and helping and learning and thinking about ways we can all solve these problems.
Great, thank you, Supervisor. Again, thanks for having us here tonight. Yeah, Stephanie Holloway, Deputy CEO. I have the honor of being in the Deputy CEO seat here in Tahoe, but I will mention that I have a long history with Placer County in the transportation space. So I had the honor of working on the Resort Triangle Transportation Plan, one of the regional goals we'll talk about here a little bit tonight, in my tenure with Public Works and now in the CEO seat. So as Cindy mentioned, just a lot of history, a lot of horsepower here tonight to talk to you about really our regional goals. So our goal tonight, though, I think is really to provide you all with a really comprehensive overview of the history. Cindy, Steve have really given you that. I'm going to talk about the goals, and then we're going to talk about implementation and operations. But demand and transportation services is really changing, and the mission of our region is really to be a less car-dependent region. And you can see here on this slide in the middle, this is an excerpt from the TRPA Regional Transportation Plan. You can see our resort triangle there in the upper left. We're really focused on a comprehensive partnership with our partners at TRPA, at the state level, with the town of Truckee, and so on and so forth. It really takes a community effort, as Steve has highlighted. That partnership, private-public partnership, is really critical for us to implement solutions. So just want to recognize the attendance here in the room and online. Though that really signals to us the importance, again, of all of this issue to all of you here tonight. And we're happy to engage with you, and we just ask that you come with a very open and a willingness to be part of the solution. So with that said, I'll just say, here on the scene, this, like I said, is on the screen is a culmination of all of our goals, from the regional plan, the regional transportation plan, to the tourism master plan, which has been in existence for a number of years and has been our focus of, how we make investments to help support our tourism economy. A lot of focus there on trails, not only as a recreational amenity, but also to solve some of our congestion and transportation solutions into the future. So Cindy already mentioned the board's ongoing investment in our transit system, in TART Connect most recently. And then the Resort Triangle Transportation Plan, really, I think, incentivizing, sort of near-term solutions, from microtransit to parking, to working with our businesses on other options to promote mobility in the region. So, just to summarize here, I think, the state of California, TRPA, and all of our local partners are really trying to shift us from a historical transportation system that builds bigger roads to facilitate more cars and more people. TRPA has had a long vision of reducing the overall load of traffic in our region from a number of different aspects. So we're happy to all be partnered in that common vision. So let me move off of that. This slide really, I think, highlights all of the projects that the county is actively working on in this Resort Triangle region. You can see here, kind of in the blue and green, I hope you can see that on the screen, is really our transportation projects. Really, this isn't all of our transportation projects, but really the priority projects. So Cindy already mentioned Fanny Bridge, working on alternatives on the 89-267 corridor to really prioritize transit on those corridors, and then improvements in our town centers from Kings Beach to Tahoe City. So the other thing you'll see here on the screen in green, again, is just really completing that network of trails for alternative modes. And then I'll just jump in quickly, talking a little bit about services. So not just infrastructure, but services that we are actively working on, programs that we're working on mobility tools. This is going to help us move, like I said, make that shift from more infrastructure, more cars, to a less car-dependent society. So things like trails, and I won't go into the details here, but you can kind of see on the screen really the mindset that we're trying to provide services and infrastructure that move us in that. That comes with a commitment, though, from people and a shift in mentality for people to start using those services and choosing alternative modes for their travel. I'll just mention, again, the priority lanes here on 267-89 Fanny Bridge. These are really a lot of our infrastructure priorities that support those services moving forward. And then last, I just want to talk a little bit more about transit. Our TART system and the Resort Triangle Plan are really, active in implementing, free to the rider fares, so you can get on the bus for free. You can get on TART Connect for free, so you can connect from your home to the bus. Like I said, there are a lot of services that we're really trying to incentivize and encourage people to use. So really, again, just, there's a lot on here. I'm going to turn it over here in a minute, but, supporting really the goals of our state, the goals of our region, to have these other sources of transportation. And then I'll just mention again, just to double down on what Cindy said, the importance really of our board forming a vital partnership with the North Tahoe Community Alliance, with formation of the T-bid. This has really allowed extra funding in our region, not only what the board has already committed to and continues to commit to, but additional resources in partnership with our business community. So just wanted to highlight that and the importance of that. So before I turn it over, I just wanted to recognize the collective team that we've assembled here tonight, from our Public Works team, from our resort partners. I believe CHP is in the room too to answer some of these operational questions that we will get into. But I just want to acknowledge the dedication that I have seen. I get the privilege of sitting in on these conversations. And just want to commend you all for really taking up the challenge, being at the table, being active in sort of this need for adaptive management of, a situation that we can't always predict, we can't plan for. So I just wanted to commend you with that and recognize you. So one last reminder before I turn it over to Ken Grimm, our Public Works Director. The survey, we are asking you to fill out the survey tonight. And that really provides us with some information for tonight's meeting. We will close that survey in about 5 minutes or so, give or take. So we encourage you to take that. And remind everybody, this is a public meeting. So at the end, we will have an open session for public comment as well. But the intent of the comment cards and the question cards really is to kind of help facilitate that conversation tonight in an organized fashion. So with that, I'll leave that and hand it over to Ken. Physically. Thanks, Ken.
Before you do that, is someone going to go around and collect the comment cards? Okay.
Someone's going to do that. So good evening, everybody. Good evening, members of both councils, as well as the public joining us here today and on Zoom. My name's Ken Grimm. I'm the Public Works Director for the county. Been with the county for 20 plus years, a while. And so today what I want to do, we're talking about winter traffic management operations. I want to talk a little bit about what we are doing today, how we've adapted over time and how we continue to adapt. I think you've heard that theme. And then talk about some of the longer term initiatives that we have going on. I do want to recognize that this is a group effort. The county is definitely involved. The resorts have always been a big portion of that. We have representatives here, Amy and Doug from North Star, Dee, Mike, and Tom from Palisades Tahoe. They're doing a lot of the heavy lifting as we try to manage traffic in the best way that we can. This has been an ongoing problem. When I first came here, we had meetings where we talked about some of the traffic backups in Olympic Valley or on 267. And we adapted, we've made some improvements, but things continue to change and we need to continue to change with it. And I think that's a lot about learning about what's going on and how do we react to that. So with that, let us start talking about first off, I want to make sure we understand when we talk about traffic management, there's some different perspectives we have to keep in mind. It's not just about people trying to get to the ski hill, for instance. They're an important component, but we also have neighborhoods that are sometimes directly impacted. We're cut through traffic, so that has to be considered. We have to make sure that at all times we're keeping our emergency service providers, emergency medical, fire, where they can get to where they need to be. That needs to be able to happen at all times. And in addition to that, we're trying to just keep people mobile through the region. People who just want to go about doing their business who aren't even in those direct areas, but are trying to go do their shopping or enjoy other pursuits and activities, whatever those may be. So we're always trying to balance the need of these groups. And so anytime we talk about doing something, it's how it might benefit one, but what does it do to the others? Because sometimes they don't all benefit everybody equally. So let's jump in a little bit about what are some of the things that we do. First off, communication. You know, we're trying to get the word out. Most of that is done by the resorts, because the resorts have a good connection with their ski patrons and when they're coming up the hill. And I'll break that down into pre-trip as well as real-time kind of information. The more information that visitors have, hopefully the better decisions they can make. Some people can question whether they are or not, but they've got the best information available. So first off, in pre-trip, it's about letting people know when we expect busy times. Getting people before they leave their home, because once they leave their home and they've driven 2 or 3 hours to get here, it's a little bit harder for them to go turn around and go back home. They're going to find some alternative, and we have people that do that all the time. So it's about getting that information and getting those messages out. You'll see that what's happened over the medium term is that congestion used to be pretty tight. You know, the ski hill opened at 9 and everybody came kind of in that first hour, and that's getting longer and longer as people try to arrive earlier to make sure they get parking. And so there's going to have to be changes in how that gets managed over time. Real-time information. So people are here, they're stuck in the line, whatever the case may be. Letting people know when the parking lots are full or where the parking is available, trying to keep them orderly, trying to keep them away from the places where they're not supposed to go. People do have, first off, the social media platforms of the resorts continue to provide people to their customers about what information is available. You'll see the changeable message signs that are out there that gets changed. Unfortunately, those are very simple messages. There's probably a whole lot more information we'd like our visitors to know to be able to make the best decision they can. But it's about having those available not just right at the ski resort, but in places, strategic locations coming into those areas, particularly along 89 and Highway 267. So then we move into what's going on with traffic management. So traffic management, I broke it down kind of into 3 areas. One's the traffic control. That's what are you doing right when the car's there? How do you make it go smoother, faster, whatever the case may be? Then there's how do we make fewer trips? How can we get trip reduction from the visitors who are out there? And then third is, can we move that peak? Instead of having everybody come at one time, we want to spread them out over time, whether that's in the day or whether that's even in the week. Because I think most of us will agree it goes crazier on the weekends than perhaps it does on the weekdays. So they're both important about how do we move that peak over time. Some of that's been happening. I think you've seen some of that happening in terms of, for instance, the congestion time is starting earlier. People are arriving earlier. So good and bad in that, right? It's longer, but it's not as bad as if they all came at one time. A bunch of things we do. You know, in Palisades, we do the 3-laning to try to get them off the highway, to get them into their parking lots. The resort takes the lead in supplying people. They also pay CHP officers to help make that be as orderly as it can. That's an important component to make sure people are getting off the highways, not diverting as little as possible, but getting into the parking lots as efficiently as possible. They do have a lot of on-site personnel, a lot of coning. They're constantly doing some adaptations to be able to make it smoother transitions from going 1 lane to 2 lane and then coming back down and getting them into the parking lot. We've also worked, and with Supervisor Gustafson's help, over time in the past, we've had issues with snow removal, not having the road wide enough, particularly when we have snows very close to some of those peak period times. We've gotten additional funding where we have a separate private contractor that helps us during the peak times to ensure we get that road widened out. Because without that road widened out, it doesn't matter what the resort tries to do with the 3-laning, you won't have enough space to do it. And so that's something that's been going on for a number of years now, has to continue on, and in an area that's really highly dependent on the weather, we're always adapting to what happens on a given day for a given weekend. Also, that what happens in there is, we talked a little bit about some of the different perspectives, one being the neighborhoods. Some things that we've seen, people migrating, trying to find either places to park or a quicker way to get around the crowd. We'll go through neighborhood communities. We've done some different things. Traditionally, we've had people that at least have been on those side streets, not always, but typically, to try to keep people, to allow residents to get out on the highway. But more and more, the problem is people trying to get into the community. I think just a week or two ago, we added some signs, at least in Olympic Valley, trying to prevent people from moving into the community. That, I think it was less last weekend. Can it still be a problem? Probably still is a problem. But we'll talk about that just a little bit more when we talk about adaptation. So that is some of the traffic control that goes down. Then there's talk about trip reduction. How do we do that? A lot of that centers around trying to provide alternatives. That's the microtransit. In fact, how many people have had a ride on TART Connect or Mountaineer? All right, very good. I think very well accepted, very easy, very cheap, as in free. And so we hope people take advantage of that. It is one of the ways we need to reduce the number of cars on the road. And anytime we get a trip on there, we'll be able to keep one less car, makes it just that much better. In addition to that, some of the satellite parking that goes on. One thing with satellite parking, we still need to provide people access into the valley. The problem we've had in the past with satellite parking is the people who get out of their car and get in the bus are stuck with all the people who are waiting in line to get in with their cars, and so there's no incentive. And we're going to talk a little bit at the end about some of the things we're doing about how do we make it so that there is an incentive in time for transit to get there before the automobile does. That today, it's just the opposite. Anyone who's been on the bus knows it takes you a whole lot longer to get there than it does by taking your own car, or at least most every time. And then last, talk a little bit about peak demand. That's really the development of the villages, I think, over time. Instead of everybody coming in at 9 and everybody leaving at 4 or roughly there, providing other activities so we don't hit that everybody leaving at one single moment. Having other pre and post-trip activities right there where they can leave their car parked and do something while places are loading or unloading.
Hey, let's be respectful of the presenter, please, and keep the comments down. Everyone will have a chance to talk later.
And it won't be that much longer, but just a little bit, making sure again what folks know that what's going on. So those are some of the things that are going on, have been going on, will continue to go on and change over time. So with that, I think we acknowledge, hey, it isn't what we want it to be. We would like it to be better than what it is. Here's some photos. These are recent. I think these are all relatively recent photos. I think they're this year, about conditions on various roadways, whether it's 267 or 89 or even Olympic Valley Road. It is tough, and it's always been that way. Question is, what can we do to make it better than what it is today? How do we keep that spillover traffic from occurring? We are noticing, particularly right now, that it is starting earlier, going longer. I think some of the trends we're seeing is not just people trying to load the parking lots, but even after the parking lots are full, there's still a lot of people who will wait around for a turn in the parking in order to try to get a few hours on the slopes. I don't recall that being always that way a decade or so ago. I think that's a relatively new phenomenon we're seeing, and it's creating some of our, I think, particularly traffic going into the neighborhoods. A lot of that seems to be focused on this time after the parking lots are loaded, and now people are looking for a place to park. They're looking for a place to drop off because by George, they've gone this far and they're going to find a way to get on the slope. That is a problem we've got to be working through and see what's happening. That's what started in this past week or two, starting with signage, which is a very low level of trying to get some compliance by letting people know, hey, there's no parking in this area. We're going to have to do more around that space. What happens after a place is parked out? And I think that goes with the idea that we also have people looking for bad locations to park. That's not just in neighborhood locations, but we have people parking in commercial parking lots and then trying to gain access to a bus or a shuttle from a place probably they shouldn't be parking at. And so we're constantly trying to push and pull. I heard Steve talk about this idea, you push in one area and then it kind of pushes out on another. And so some of these we are going to be chasing, we'll continue to chase as we try to make it as good as we can. So I acknowledge that it's not as good as I'd like to be. I also want to make sure it's clear, I have no magic wands to make everybody go away and have there be less traffic. It's all about how do we make the system as efficient as we can to make it as good as possible for as long as possible, reduce the peaks, and make those peaks as reasonable as we can. And I think these are some of the things we were just talking about. So I don't see anything new as far as we do have meetings periodically. We do have, particularly with Palisades, we have an annual meeting to talk about, as we talk about this idea of adapting. Sometimes you adapt on the fly. That was like some of the signage we put out, some minor things. Some of the adaptation kind of occurs at the end of the year when we say, hey, what did we learn from last year? How can we apply that to this year? So it's a combination, because as I also heard, some of these changes don't just happen overnight. They take some planning, you have to garner some resources, some people, or whatever the case is to make them work. We have, and I think there has been discussions about, hey, why don't we get maybe more CHP officers to operate the signals, whether it's North Star and 267 or Olympic Valley. And we've done that in the past. We used to always have a CHP officer, particularly before the signal, I think is most of that. But what we found over time, generally speaking, the signal works about as good as somebody physically out there if it's timed right and does well, depending on the situation. Usually that works about as good as having someone stuck out there and manually kind of adjusting the traffic. So those things might come back. They're still always in the discussion, but we found that it seems that optimizing the signals is usually the best you can do at a given location. We continue to use some of the satellite parking, whether it's the airport for North Star, or at times in the past, I don't think we've done this in a while, but maybe there'll be some discussion of this when we start talking about World Cup, is, we've used, I think, the high school in Truckee for a kind of a shuttle stop to get people out of their car before they get on 89 and bringing them into the valley. We'll see what during that item exactly what they have in store for things over and above what we typically have been doing. And of course, we talked about microtransit. We talked about the expansion of transit, which is a big part of trying to provide people alternatives. So let's talk a little bit. So where the heck are we going from here? Because a lot of the things we're talking about when we talk about moving the coning and do that, minor things we're trying to tweak and get as good a efficiency as we can. But what's out there long term that might make something actually better than what it is today? I do believe Stephanie mentioned our resort triangle transportation plan, an effort to kind of, hey, what strategies can we employ? Because we are not going to be paving our way out of this and make freeways through our communities everywhere. We're not going to do that. We're going to insist that people use alternatives. In the summer, we have trails and things like that people can use. That's really not working in the winter, but it's really about transit. It's the micro transit. It's full-scale transit, depending on where you're coming from and where you're going. So in that resort triangle transportation plan, expansion of transit is the biggest thing. That expansion has been occurring. The board and with Supervisor Gustafson's leadership have really led to a substantial more investment in providing transit service. Now, we are complicated in these days because with the labor market the way it is, it's hard to find a bus driver. I think the resorts are finding that for their shuttles as well as us, where we cannot keep enough bus drivers to run full service. But the money is there to do it. And in fact, I'm hoping that within the next month, maybe sooner, that our board's going to be considering doing some special incentive pays for our bus drivers to make it more lucrative for them to come on board and stay as a bus driver, both in terms of starting with us and then staying with us, so longevity. So we've got some bonuses and some higher pay rates that we are looking to ask our board to approve here. I think that's within the next month. So that will hopefully get this expansion of transit. But I mentioned before, if you get in a bus, you got your family, you get in the bus, and then you're stuck with all the cars in line, what have you really gained, and how many people are really gonna do that? And so it comes to, we need to do something to make that bus be able to get there quicker than the car. And so one of the big strategies that's being put about, and has actually, I think, been adopted, but there's a lot more detail that needs to be worked out, is this idea of transit priority lanes on 267 and 89. That is basically a lane, probably in the middle, that will be a two-way lane only for transit. Probably in there, probably includes shuttle buses, but super high occupancy types of vehicles, so that people can beat the line. That is a very expensive project. We are actually in the process of getting a consultant on board now to do the next phase of that strategy, trying to, hey, how is it gonna work? How much is it gonna cost? Can we phase it? Can we, because some of these things that could cost upwards of $100 million, we may have to do in pieces. If so, what are the pieces that make the most sense? We're hoping in terms of that transit priority lane, we are talking with emergency service providers, because what we also hope is, soon as summer comes around, we're gonna be talking about fire, how do we evacuate issues? Hey, maybe this transit priority lane in an emergency could be another way out, another full lane that's dedicated to getting out of the basin or out of the region. So we're hoping that can maybe do double duty, if you will. So that is one of the longer term strategies. Expansion of traffic and, parking management. And parking management is really a way to try to incentivize or discourage people from, hey, you need to park your car wherever's appropriate place and not drive everywhere you want to go in the region. To do that, you need to make parking not so easy. Maybe it costs money, maybe it's reserved. I don't know, that's what we're talking through now. You know, that's how the big cities do it. We're not a big city, but during those times, we need to do something that discourages people from just driving around, that they can find a place to park. Hopefully, the place we want them to park is cheaper than the more convenient place that they have to drive to everywhere. So those are probably the three big strategies. I think with that, I will turn it back over to the council, because I do know there's a lot of public that wants to speak, and so I'll end with that.
And Ken, maybe we have a little more presentation. I'll take the, thank you. So I think next we'd like to entertain questions from the two councils. And then, and I'm gonna actually toggle back here. I think people online have been asking about the survey. So I'm gonna toggle back to our QR code. So this is our online survey. Again, if you are online, if you scan this with your smartphone or type the address there into your browser, it will bring up a survey. And so we're actively managing that survey behind the scenes and culminating questions that come in through that survey. So with that, we'll go to MAC questions, and then we'll be ready to prepare for questions that we are receiving through the comment cards and then online.
And I'll come around. If you've got a yellow card, we need to pick those up now and start getting ready. And you can add more questions as we go.
Okay, so the way we're going to do this is first each of the MAC members will get to ask one question. So don't make it multiple parts. We can go around again if necessary, but there's a lot of people here, so we don't want to monopolize the time. So MAC members, pick your most important comment or question. If you have a statement, make the statement, but you also should be limited to something like 3 minutes, just like everybody else. Then we'll go to the public. If you have questions, that's what the comment cards are. And then we will do online. So we'll do it in 3 steps. And if we have time, we'll go back and ask more questions from the MAC members and everyone else. So Who wants to go first with their comment or question?
Start with Joe. Just start with Joe.
Megan,
Yes,
turn on your mic.
Megan
And make it
Shalimi,
close.
Kings Beach. A question to Ken, how would you describe the level of service at the key intersections during the winter at this point in time?
How would I describe it? Well, during the peak times, it is congested. It is, how would I describe it? Bottled up, gummed up, or at least in the directions. In the morning, it's coming in, and in the afternoon, it's leaving. So those intersection operations are highly congested.
Well, you used to describe it as an A to an F.
Oh, I would say in the worst of the worst, it would be an F. F has a definition of how many seconds it is, and when it is backed up, then it's normally going to be F during those periods of time.
Thank you, Ken.
So why don't you leave it on for Russell?
Yes.
And please talk close to the mic.
Ken, one question. On the weekends, who is the lead agency or the lead responsible person for the traffic flow from Truckee into Olympic Valley? Is there anybody that is sort of monitoring it, or?
So.
One of the questions I have is, would it be conceivable to have 2 lanes going in at one time?
From the highway into Olympic Valley.
Right.
And what we'll do is I will take it off. Is there enough pavement? There might be. It's pretty wide in a lot of those areas. But what that means operationally, I don't know.
Or would it be a Caltrans thing, or?
Well, I think it'll be a team thing. So these are some of the options, suggestions that we should be looking into.
Yeah, well,
I think we've looked at that before, but we'll look at it again, and we need to be able to answer the question.
Well, and
correctly.
it would have to be all the way from Truckee right to the parking lot.
Yeah.
And with management in the parking lot, putting people into spaces to keep the flow going.
And we
Otherwise,
did look
it's
at
just gonna
bus
be
on
the same old
shoulder,
mess.
correct?
That's correct.
So we did look at bus on shoulder, and even that was didn't meet the safety standards of Caltrans to even have trained bus drivers driving on the shoulder. So to do 3-laning, I'm gonna guess, is gonna be the same answer, if not worse, because you'll have public using that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but.
Yeah, we did look on bus on shoulders. That wasn't able to move forward, which was to try to create another lane on the shoulder to allow buses to get in. But what happens if you even had 2 lanes? I'm not sure that would benefit. That just creates a bigger parking lot. At the end, it's how fast do you allow people to get into the parking? It might be beneficial, it might not. I think we're gonna find that it's not feasible to work with what we have out there. But we'll find out.
Okay?
Thanks.
Rebecca,
I don't have any questions right now.
Maggie.
You mentioned potentially hiring a consultant to look at the reverse lane strategy. Can you share what you would imagine, should that be feasible, the timeline on implementing a reverse lane strategy would be?
So part of what it is to determine, hey, what's the cost? Because a lot of these, for those, and I saw a lot of people I recognized in the room when we did the Kings Beach Commercial Corridor, it took a decade plus to make that happen. We will be looking to see how long does it take, or what might it take to do the whole thing, one fell swoop. We'll also look at, are there options to put it in pieces that can be implemented sooner, that still have benefit. The original transportation plan today talks about maybe you start by giving transit priority through the traffic signals, a preemption. When they come up, they've got a little thing on top that makes the light turn green. The second phase that at least was suggested as a possible was that from there you would have preemption and you would have a lane, a jump lane, just that helps get transit through the intersection so they can help bypass the intersection quicker. And then the third was doing the whole lane. The whole lane obviously has the most benefit, particularly if we start talking about some of the evacuation possibilities. You can't do that with just a preemption. That wouldn't help. So
Could-
we,
Could you imagine a world where if it's possible to do the whole thing, it could be complete in under 3 years?
I don't believe it's likely, the way projects are funded, that it could be done in 3 years. It can take time. Once you know what you're going to do and going through the environmental review, many of you have been aware of environmental reviews for all sorts of projects and area plans. Those can take years to do, and you still have to design it and compile all the dollars needed to make it happen.
Thank you.
Don?
Multi-line and different solutions. How does the limitation of the mouse hole and the failure of the roundabouts in Truckee on big days factor in? How much is that being looked at, and what ideas have been bannered around for that?
I was aware, gosh, many years ago, this might be a decade plus, you know, the town was looking at expanding the mouse hole. Very difficult to do, and I probably not likely to happen. And so whatever happens, the one thing that mouse hole does today is it meters traffic, how much gets through there, that then can make its way down to Olympic Valley. So it spreads out the load. So for folks, for instance, if we're talking about the 89 corridor, it does limit how many people can feed below it. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It kind of spreads the congestion around at different locations and not concentrated at one point.
Backs it up onto I-80.
But it backs it up onto 80, and it limits how the buses could move somehow or another. And the problem that I've seen with the roundabouts is that.
Don, can you speak into the mic? Sorry.
I'm sorry. We should have had more mics, I guess. The problem with the roundabouts is not only is it, you know, a cluster coming off of 80 trying to get, you know, southbound on 89, but the roundabouts get completely stopped, so no one can even go northbound heading into Truckee. So there's a huge problem with, you know, I keep thinking like emergency vehicles. You can't get across those roundabouts. I think studying how the roundabouts work and how that plays into this is a big part of a potential solution down the road.
So the roundabout's on 80.
Yeah,
Right
the 80,
I understand.
80, 89.
89 as they access
Well,
interstate.
80 and 89.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Catherine?
My question is about TARC Connect microtransit. It's been wildly popular, but I know there's a problem getting drivers on all of our transit options. And one thing I've heard from many of the TARC Connect drivers is that they're not year-round, full-time job opportunities. So they would like to work year-round doing TARC Connect, but they get 4 months working, then they get 2 to 3 months off, and then they have to go find another job, and then they're not available for TARC Connect. So we talked about incentive pay for these drivers, but what are we doing to make these year-round, full-time opportunities, professional careers, while that would also serve the consumer by offering this full-time year-round?
Great question. You know, we have such peaks here in the Tahoe region, and so historically, we've always ramped up, even before microtransit, just transit in general, we ramped up operations in the winter and in the summer, because we have a similar problem in the summer. And we always have had problems trying to find part-time people. The beauty of particularly a county job is the fact that you have all these benefits. Part-time drivers, by law, don't get that. So what we've been doing, and between the money that's been flowing in through the TOT dollars, which one of the few areas, when I talk to my colleagues about, they're used to just spending what the state gives them for transit, we're one of the few areas and regions that spends a lot over that in terms of the TOT. And so we've basically, right now, I think we have space for 30-something full-time drivers at TARC. That's not TARC Connect. I think right now we may be down to 13 or 14. Because we cannot find someone, and that's part of why we're trying to increase costs. Those are full-time benefited positions and hopefully higher paying here in the next couple of months.
Specific though to TARC Connect, that is a contractor that we've hired. Sorry to jump in, Ken,
No,
but I want to
please
be
do.
direct because we've been working on this with the resorts because we're in dire straits we're 56% vacancy of our TARC drivers right now. over half of our mainline bus drivers are vacant. So I've been on a number of calls on what can we do with TARC Connect. They've hired they've got 2 more vehicles, 2 more drivers, or more drivers, because they can be more flexible. They don't require a Class A license to drive those, as you know. But they are a contractor. So what they pay and how they benefit and the times, we have to think about. But I'm more than happy to champion trying to make that more full-time. So I think that's a great solution or suggestion. We still have to get people out of their cars on those things, as you know, and they're wildly popular. We have transported a lot of people.
There's a 4-hour wait normally to get one, so it's not like people
Well,
don't
and
want
partly
to.
because they're supplementing our TART service that had to go from 30-minute headways to 1-hour headways because we were missing so many bus drivers. So that's been a huge impact. And the resorts, we've all been on calls. What can we do to get more drivers? It's a nationwide shortage. I don't want anyone to think it's just us. Everywhere we go, South Shore is having the same issue, and then nationwide, Class A drivers are really hard to come by. People are paying top dollar, signing bonuses, and county is acting. We had one of the highest salaries, now we're lower again, now we've got to bump it up again, because no one wants to have to get the qualifications for a Class A driver.
Because we have the money to do it. I mean,
We have the budget to do it, we do.
Right now, it's about physical bodies. TARC Connect's a little different, as Supervisor Gustafson said. That's another just money. You pay them to be a year-round, and I'm sure we can talk them into being there year-round. Yep. Fair enough.
Absolutely. That's a whole nother that's our next meeting where we'll have 300 people here, at least.
And I want to just recognize, everybody loves TART Connect. It's a great service. It's not an inexpensive service. It is free, and so, that comes with a cost. It definitely has its purpose, though. We've talked about how, the big bus service, the long runs that we do from Truckee to Tahoe City, Kings Beach to Truckee, those are really best served in that big bus capacity because we can get a lot of people on the bus and we drive a far distance, right? So I just wanted to kind of put that in there. It's a great service. It's meant to be a micro service. And so I just don't want to lose track of that in the conversation tonight.
Eugene.
So if we get bus drivers and if there's a place for them to live, it would seem to me that this reversible transit lane that can also be used in evacuation just seems to be like the ideal solution, at least for on the big highways. But we've been talking about that for a long time, even with the shoulder, and we run up into the brick of it's the state. There's nothing any of us can do. It doesn't matter how much money we raise or what our good ideas are. It's all Caltrans. Runs 267, Caltrans runs 89. So that's just been so frustrating. I'm wondering if you can offer any optimism there, Ken, or because when I saw that picture, I was like, wow, that would be so cool. That's never going to happen. So that's very discouraging.
I'll point to folks in the room that said, hey, Kings Beach was never going to be a 3-lane with roundabout, and today it is. Will I say, going to Steve's idea, it's a lot of hard work and perseverance to get it done. Caltrans had a concern with some of the operational situations dealing with a bus on a shoulder and dealing with the space they have available today. They are at the table with us, and we've had good discussions with them on the transit priority lane, center lane. They are much more optimistic. They are much more optimistic about it. They are supplying input to what they want us to be looking at. Now, will there be problems and things that have to be worked out? I'm sure there will be. But they are at the table. They are as optimistic as I think I see Caltrans being on something that's very different and new. And they're giving us input. They're not saying no, but they did have a concern with the bus on shoulder, and that there were some real operational issues there. And I think I even understand some of those, which is why we pivoted and adapted to this new kind of new strategy.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Mark. Use the microphone.
The other problem is the parking. If you are going to use a truck busing system, people have to park somewhere. You've got the airport as a possibility. That works out great for North Star, but it doesn't work out so great for Palisades. It works kind of, but not great, because it still gets into the congestion of everything happening on 267, West River Street, all of that. So the only other location I can think of, and I guess I can somewhat address this to Steve. Steve and I have been knocking around doing this stuff since we were in this room, creating the well, that too. That's even earlier. Is the old mill site on West River Street that was, and I don't know if it's still owned by the Hendricksons. It's just sitting there doing nothing, and I'm sure people in Truckee Town Council know what's going on with it, but that's the location, because it bypasses, people could get there two ways, two directions, one underneath the railroad and then also the mouse hole. And then you could have busing from that location, or to really pie in the sky. Again, I understand, but we're the 5th largest economy on the planet, and how we can't do these things, I don't understand. But a monorail down the center of Highway 89, and that also accomplishes another thing, which is I live on Bridge 10 on the river, and you do these analyses of accidents, and we're having a fatal accident every year. It's head-ons. I heard the one last year, and I go, what was that? And they're dying every year. And that's what the CHP does analysis on roads that are dangerous. And Highway 89 is a very dangerous road. So you would be able to put dividers down where the pylons would be to hold the monorail, and you wouldn't have fatal accidents anymore. It wouldn't happen. And so what I'm putting that out for, is because if we move to spending all this money for a bus lane or something, we're really not paying attention to the solution to the problem, which is something that is that can inspire people. It can be transformative for our area, make it a center like Interlaken in Switzerland is. We can be a center, and we have to start thinking creatively like this. So anyway, I just think we're not thinking the way we should be thinking. But yeah.
So, David, Vlad is online and has a question.
We'll get to him.
Okay.
Andrew.
I'm sorry.
Vlad.
Okay.
Who else is online?
Vlad, Elisa, who else wants to have us a question? That's it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Vladimir Blazyanets, and I'm a member of the Olympic Valley MAC. I've been for a few years. I enjoyed hearing all these future plans. In some places, they're actually old plans, somewhat modified. But I was waiting to hear somebody say something about capacity of the Tahoe region. And you can keep improving the situation unless you cut short the continuous influx of people into the region. You will never reach your goals. So you need to go into law and start some legal setups and processes and enforce them. Then you will accomplish something.
Thanks, Vlad. Elisa?
Elisa?
Hi. Yep. A comment about the creating more things at the base of the ski area for activities as a traffic solution. I've skied all over the world, and it doesn't matter where I'm skiing. After I've skied all day, I want to take off my ski boots, and I don't want to carry my skis. And if people don't have their cars, or their cars are at remote lots, that's a big challenge. So the idea that you can just make people not want to drive their car to go skiing with activities is different. If it's a bus and you can actually get back to your house in Truckee and get the ski boots, or put the skis down or change clothes and then go back out, that accomplishes something. But the idea of just building things at the base of the ski area as a traffic solution, I don't see any validity in that. The one question I had on, I realize traffic is going to take many years to address. I don't have any great ideas to tell you about that. But one thing that has to happen right away is there's a great public health problem right now with people urinating and defecating in random places because they don't have access to a bathroom for, 2 to 4+ hours between Truckee and the ski area. And they are going on the side of the road, they're going in parks, they're going in people's driveways, they're going on the side of people's houses, in front of people's front doors. It's that has to be addressed immediately, like places plowed on 89 for porta potties, but there's no excuse for not addressing that situation right away. And it's not a multi-year, it's not even a multi-week, like there needs to be bathrooms put out right away. That's it.
Okay, I guess it's to me. I'll make a few comments and observations. I don't really have any questions. Number one, I was involved in the very first meeting on Bus on Shoulder. That was almost 8 years ago. We have made no progress. And yes, actually it was CHP that objected to it first before Caltrans. But we should have vectored right away to the high HOV lane, the 3-lane. I mean, it's taken 6 years to come up with that idea, to study it. I mean, this is crazy that's the solution. And if you look at places like Park City and Vail and Sun Valley and other ski areas, they face the same problem we did. If you look at Park City's got one main road down into the city. They created a bus-only lane. They have remote parking lots, and that's how they solve the problem, and those buses are free. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are other places that we can go to talk to. In fact, I went around and did a survey of all the different areas and presented it to this group that met 6 years ago. Again, let's not think that we have to invent the wheel. Other areas saw this problem, they addressed it, and we can pick their brains, number one. Number two, if you look at the length of the amount of road between the Mouse Hole and the Olympic Valley parking lot, it's 9 miles, roughly, all right? If you divide that by the number of feet a car is, when the number of cars that are between the Mouse Hole and the parking lot is half the parking lot. It's 2,500 cars. The parking lot holds 5,000 cars, according to the specific plan. So when you've got half the parking lot full and 89 backed up, you're dead. That's it. You stop. I mean, you should not be continuing to add cars because there's no place for them to go. I'll also point out that from an Olympic Valley MAC point of view, this is pre-COVID. Once a year, we had, and this goes even back to the KSL days, we had them come and talk to the MAC about the commitments that they would make and the plans that they had for how they were going to manage traffic in the winter. This is not a 2023 or 2022 phenomenon. It's been going on forever, all right? And they made a bunch of commitments and I would like them to sign up for these again. Number one, if you as a resident were to park your car on Lanny Lane or any of the roads there between November and May, you'll get ticketed, right? There are big signs that say no off-street parking. Yet, during these busy weekends, there have been cars all along Lanny, Christie, and nobody is being ticketed. Whose responsibility is it to ticket those cars? The commitment was made that the only place that off-street parking would be allowed was actually on the north side of the parking lot, and there were signs that said, here's where you can park, all right? It was to be made very clear that you could not park further down on Olympic Valley Road, you couldn't park in the residential areas, or you would get ticketed, or you would get towed. Nothing along that line has happened, all right? And as long as people pay no penalty for parking in the residential areas, hell, they're going to continue to park it. They park in the condo parking lots, they park in the post office parking lot, they park all over the place. And there's no penalty to them, so why not continue to do it? That was number one. Number two, there was going to be an electronic sign down at the mouse hole so that people would, as they're coming along, would see that the sign says no parking. So they could turn onto West River and escape getting onto an 8-mile parking lot. Once you've gone past West River, that's it. You're either going to make an illegal U-turn on 89, or you're going to go all the way to Squaw Valley to turn around, all right? There should be, and there was supposed to be, an electronic sign at the mouse hole that said parking lot full.
I think there is, when I came in today, they do have a sign, kind of by right past the McDonald's, or right there by the McDonald's, they do have a sign.
And it says, but what it says is, look at your app.
Okay.
Huh? Doesn't?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm proven wrong, but I think it said, I saw it said, look at your app.
All right.
It says that before you get to Squaw, before you get to the entrance. That's the one that says about the app.
Okay.
I hear that. I understand. I think what's hard is a lot of those are not remotely operated, and so in real time it can be hard to change. But it's a good point.
Those things should be able to be solved faster than a 3-lane thing. All right.
Technology exists.
Number 3, there were supposed to be traffic monitors at the intersections of Olympic Valley Road and all the cross streets, so that people who live in the residential areas could turn left in the morning, all right? Even turning right is hard enough, but try to go through the traffic, impossible, all right? So there were going to be traffic monitors, and there was going to be, when the parking lot was full, now maybe this has already been done, I live in the valley, so some of these things I don't see, a turnaround at the fire station. So people, if the parking lot is full and Olympic Valley Road is backed up, they turn around at the fire station. That's the widest spot in the road. I mean, once you've gone on to Olympic Valley Road, you can't turn around anymore. All right, so there was going to be a turnaround there, and there was actually, and there has been several times, I don't know if it's been a CHP person or a sheriff, but that's been talking to people as they come in and said, there's no parking. If you're a resident, fine, but if you're not a resident, turn around and go back, all right?
So Chairman, I'm wondering if it might be, Stephanie over here, all the way. I'm wondering if it might be helpful. We do have our Palisades team here in the room. Sounds like you have a lot of questions about their.
I'm sure they will respond to me.
Okay.
All right?
Just want to let you know that
And
that
one
might
other
be a
thing
good
that,
source.
that Palisades talked about, I mean, I'm looking for short-term solutions. I mean, a monorail would be great, all right? The 3-lane thing would be great. We could put the railroad back that used to run along the river. But we need to look at the short-term things and use technology and some simple math that tells us once the mouse hole to the parking lot is full of cars, I mean, that's half the parking lot right there. So,
Again, I think it might be helpful to have Palisades talk about their operational details.
Should we have other people ask questions and then gather them all together and have them talk?
I think what we were hoping to do is.
Answer.
Yeah, we have some questions online, and Cindy has collected the questions from in the room. So we can go to that. I just wanted to recognize a lot of the questions
We've been
you have.
answering them as we go, so I
Yeah.
thought you wanted to keep answering them as we go. So it might answer other questions if we get answers
So
on these.
continue doing the questions.
No,
Oh.
but let them answer like we've been answering the other ones.
Okay. Have at me.
All the rest of us just got one question. He's chairman.
He's chair.
Y'all vote.
I was making comments.
Supervisor Gustafson, council members, county staff, thanks a lot for gathering us together tonight. Hello, everybody. I'm Dee Byrne, President and COO of Palisades Tahoe. I've been in the community for a dozen years, been in the ski industry for my entire career. I'll never forget new hire orientation when I arrived 12 years ago. My supervisors said, be sure to leave your home no later than 7 a.m. on peak days and holidays, or you won't make it to work on time. So thank you. So we're living this too. We want to be a good neighbor and community member. In fact, we'd like to be your friends. And our employees are going through the same thing. I go through the same thing if I leave too late. I've experienced it. I experienced it last Sunday. We're in it with you. We want to be part of the solution. And so we're willing to roll our sleeves up and work together on this. David, to your list, I'll go quickly. Oh, let me just introduce some team members that I've got. I've got my experts in the room. I've got Tom Fighton here behind me, Senior Vice President of Business Development, which includes marketing, sales, finance, so on and so forth. And I've got Mike Martin, VP of Base Area Operations, who oversees transportation and parking and a host of other sectors of our business at Palisades. So I'm probably going to turn it over to Mike on a couple of these things because he knows exactly how we are managing the messaging on those CMS boards. And there is one at Deerfield Drive. And I think it was last Saturday we decided to be flip finally and try to catch attention by saying, we promise we are full, turn around. Yeah, and my guys count, we know, we're working with CHP who's in the room. They've been a fabulous partner to us. We contract with them. They work with us every weekend to help manage it. And so we do the car count, David, we do what you do, or do what you said, and we know how many cars are on 89, and we try to cut it off. But they don't cut off, folks. We can't control behavior, right? And so then we do our best when they come into the valley. And CHP or Mike can talk more about that checkpoint that David talked about. It used to be down at the fire station as a turnaround. We've moved it up into the valley to the post office so that we could move more cars off of 89 and have that conversation up into the valley and still provide enough room for the turnaround right there. So we are activating that system as soon as the lots are close to full. So message boards, traffic monitors. Honestly, we blew it on January 21st, the first weekend. We've been parked out for 4 days. January 21st, 22nd, 28, 29. So. I'm looking at Mike here for help.
Turnaround days.
Okay. Okay, sorry. I apologize. Mike just corrected me. We've had 4 checkpoint turnaround days. We've had other days where the parking has actually filled up, but we haven't run that operation with CHP. So apologize for not being accurate on that. I'm all about being transparent. You guys can ask me whatever you want, and there is some proprietary information that I'm not going to provide tonight, like total pass sales in the region or capacity on the mountain, tickets on the mountain, that sort of thing, but the rest of it is fair game. Let's see. Traffic monitors. So we had the traffic monitors out there last weekend, but quite frankly, we are contracting with a third party because we don't have enough resources, just like the community. We don't have enough bus drivers, shuttle drivers. We don't have enough parking attendants. So we're doing our best, but we are having to go through a third party contract labor, and we hope that they show up with enough personnel every weekend to not only set up and tear down and manage our whole third lane in and egress, as well as to provide the traffic monitors to get you out of the neighborhood. So we'll keep focused on that. And then parking full, turnaround, I guess I already talked about that. What did I miss, David?
Residential parking.
Residential parking, CHP. We need their help on that. We can't ticket.
No, I understand that. But is it the sheriff or CHP?
Ken?
Yeah, for on the road, CHP has traffic enforcement within the unincorporated county. I will add, and I know this past weekend, because we were anticipating, we did have our one parking enforcement officer, I heard that, was also out on that day. Now, that's for parking on the street illegally. When they're parked in a private parking lot, that's a different story. That is not.
Who do those condo organizations go to?
I will find out, because that becomes a civil kind of, people have to put up a sign that has the particular civil code, and then they can tow based on that. There is a procedure. Maybe Commander Eggety knows it. If not, that's fine, but that is a different animal than the parking on the street.
And it's CHP that would ticket on the residential streets as opposed to Olympic Valley Road?
On all county roads, in Olympic Valley, all the roads, except for perhaps any private roads, would be CHP. Or the county does have the ability to ticket with our parking enforcement officer under our ordinance on a county road in Olympic Valley.
So,
Thank you, I got one right.
so speaking for the residents of Olympic Valley, if someone has parked in front of their house illegally because the sign says you cannot park from November to May, what do they do?
If they are in the street, I think what we're gonna be trying to do is finding a way between CHP and county, a way to ticket those people. I am aware that probably at a $60, $70 ticket, people might even consider that a parking fee. And so there may then have to be an adaptation that occurs because of that. But if they're parking in the road right away in the winter, they can be ticketed.
So can I ask you to get back to us on some procedure or some contact information where the residents of Olympic Valley, and maybe it also applies to Alpine, can contact, so they could say, ticket this car in front of me, and maybe there can be kept records so that if a car has parked illegally multiple times, it's actually towed. Somehow we have to discourage the people from parking on.
Fair question.
And David, if I could just be so bold as to interrupt and say that many people in the grid of Kings Beach and in Lake Forest would agree with you. We have a summer parking problem with the same situations, people blocking driveways, blocking sidewalks, parking on sidewalks, accessing the lake. So this is not unique to winter operations or just Olympic Valley. It is happening throughout our region. And that is why Stephanie's been pushing hard with me, and I've been pushing hard on parking management programs. We've got to get them region-wide, because we're all suffering. So right now we're here in winter, and it's very fresh in our minds, but I guarantee you my inbox will be full next summer again.
So does anybody in Palisades want to continue talking, or we should go to more questions?
I've got questions, so. So from the audience, I have a few questions. If there's more, give Sophie your cards and we'll get them. Does the resort triangle take into account the hazardous traffic congestion on Highway 80, both east and westbound, as ski traffic jockeys to find most effective way to get to the resorts, avoiding the roundabouts. Sometimes these people are dead stop blocking highway lanes. Ken, I don't know if we've been working with Caltrans on that issue. That's certainly got to be an issue. Or Stephanie, do you know if Caltrans has been working on that?
I haven't had any immediate discussions with them. It's a difficult animal, I will say. Traffic, the vehicles on the road are cumulative. CHP is here to address it, but I haven't had any conversation with Caltrans. It's hard to discern, right? Like the traffic that's in that area at that time is cumulative. It's local traffic, it's ski traffic, it's business traffic, and so the problem is the problem. I just want to be careful that we're not pinning the cumulative issue on one particular issue. It adds to itself. It becomes sort of its own issue.
But as we're looking at solving our problems, I think we definitely need, as a region, and with the town of Truckee and Nevada County and Hardy, Supervisor Bullock and I have been talking with our town council members as well about, it's a regional issue. It's backing up onto 80, and as somebody who frequently watches how far it's backed out, because I'm going the other way down the mountain to Auburn to some sort of meeting, that's an issue. So, did you want to speak? Would you like me to talk about sure. I know we'd love you to.
Make sure he is.
I know, that's why I moved over here. It's an odd setup.
Hi there, good evening. Eric Agady, I'm the Truckee CHP commander. Thanks for having us here, and happy to talk about this I-80 backup. So the priority of the CHP is to protect life and property, right? And last year, the town and us started seeing a big issue with the I-80 backups. And our officers, to the point where we had officers running traffic breaks, coming down eastbound down the hill, coming westbound at Hospital Hill, to avoid those serious wrecks. Freeway speed traffic coming in to stop traffic is a huge concern of ours and highly dangerous. So, partnering with the town of Truckee and Caltrans, we started doing active traffic control at West River Street. The idea being we want to flow 89 south in the morning and avoid that backup for as long as possible. So we've been doing that now successfully with the town of Truckee, who runs Deerfield intersection, and we'll do the West River intersection, with the idea of taking that huge volume of east and westbound traffic on 80, coming from Tahoe Donner, keeping the roundabouts moving down 89 south, down that 9 miles of roadway that we talked about. And then we have our units working at Palisades with their traffic control. We found a lot of success with it last year. This year, we've had success too. There's a lot more traffic though. It feels like. We every weekend we're adjusting the times of that 89 south. We're having units going up and down 89, telling us, what's the impact, where's the slowdown on there, how are we looking down at Palisades with our partners and Mike. And so it's a lot of effort. Traffic control is a piece of what we do, but like I said, a big piece too is the 80, but it really comes down to us wanting to release traffic from I-80, to answer the question, utilize the main artery of 89 and keep that flowing as best we can. And I'll say I'm happy, we were encouraged this last weekend. If you follow us on social media, we try to give updates on this type of stuff. We even utilize a cone pattern to help with flow, so we've put that in. And by 9 o'clock, traffic was clear out of Truckee, 9:05 off of West River. So that's not, I know Ski Hill opens at 9, but that's emergency response traffic. That's people being able to get to Ace Hardware and Safeway in the town. So we're encouraged by some of the stuff we're doing with that.
Okay, great. Don't leave yet though, because I have 2 more questions. 2 more public questions. Having the turnaround at the post office incapacitates the ability for Mountaineer to operate. Can it be moved back down to the fire station?
So the big issue, again, this is where team effort with Palisades. The big issue we were finding with the post office turnaround, or the fire station turnaround, is whenever we're stopping a car and talking to them for even if it's 5 seconds, and we're talking a huge volume, now we have a huge backup coming on 89. And again, 89 being our main artery for emergency traffic for people traveling between North Lake Tahoe and Truckee, we wanted to get that traffic off of 89 to a better place. It's a public road. It's very hard to deny access somebody that just even wants to go down and take a picture or go to the store or go to the, and screening every car and asking where you're going. We're talking, that's a 10, 20-second conversation. We were seeing, and this was before, if we didn't have an officer there, the 20-year-old kid from Palisades is getting his ear full and not sure what to do. So now you have a minute conversation. So it really caused, and we know with queues, any stoppage, now we're talking about a huge backup. So it's really worked effectively moving it up to the post office. In 4 days, I'll say is encouraging too, because that means the traffic operation with the 2-lane in has been working well for that traffic flow on Olympic Valley.
Okay, and one more. Does CHP actually time Highway 89 south at West River Street for 10 minutes when they direct traffic and 1 minute for traffic from West River Street?
We tried that on Saturday, yes. 2 times. It's funny, that made its way around pretty quick. So I stood at the intersection of Deerfield and 89 South from 6:30 in the morning on Saturday to after 9 o'clock. That's why I can speak directly to these times when it was clear. We never saw, we went from our usual do a minute, 4 minute, we'll go 5, stood there because we watched basically 80 traffic be flow the whole time and 89 flow the whole time. So that's why I say we're trying these different timings because we understand the West River too, but hey, our volume is coming on 80 and that's where our danger zones are and that's where our emergency traffic's got to get through those roundabouts because as was discussed, the roundabouts become clogged up. You simply cannot get through those areas to respond to an emergency, which is a big concern of ours, as well as keeping the people on 80 safe.
That's all I had in writing here. Do you have any online? Okay, thank you.
You got it? Thanks.
Don't go far. Thank you for your service, that's right. Okay, 2 more questions. Why don't the resorts implement a Disneyland-style reservation system to monitor the numbers that come? No reservation, don't bother to come up the mountain. And Amy, we got to get you in here too.
Hey, you're a resort, when do you go?
Hey, thanks, Steve. Good evening. Oh, bumped it. Good evening. To reiterate just the appreciation for this council, joint council, and the county for bringing us all together in the community. And, you know, a headline I think I just want to start with this year. I've lived in this area for coming up on 12 years. I'm newer to my role at North Star, but a headline this year is just, you know, conditions are incredible and demand is very high. And to the points that were presented on the screen by Ken, I think there's one that's really important, and I think it's at the heart of this question, is really around product strategy. And, you know, this is something that is really evolving in our industry. And, you know, just some perspective over the last 6 years specifically in the role or in the kind of experience at North Star is we are seeing some really effective product strategy that is addressing confidence in knowing that you're going to have a spot. And I would say that when it comes to arrival strategy, it's really not a one size fits all. And, you know, being part of an industry that we share a lot of information, we share a lot of best practices, we have to solve to our own uniques. And I think that is a system that has been proven and does work for a lot of resorts. But certainly I think there are other unique solves just based on the traffic that you do have. But kind of going back up to product strategy, some of the really effective trends that we're seeing that are helping to answer that, while we are selling more passes and while we are, increasing visitation overall, over time, we're seeing some really positive trends with just the directional distribution of visitation. And, a couple of things that are really interesting with the traffic this year, with just the amount of excitement that we have for visitation, is that look at our peak days, they're actually down about 6% over the last 6 years. And I'm speaking specifically just to North Star's experience. And I think more importantly, what we're seeing is a trend towards midweek visitation. This year, over the last 6-year average, we're up 54%. And this is a trend we're going to continue to drive by our product strategy as we learn more about how we can make sure that that person knows that there's going to be a spot for them. But as far as, consideration for how we manage parking and arrival strategy, it's on the table every year. It's a conversation that we have every year about how can we continually improve and get better. And, that's certainly something that we're modeling in lead of next year's product sales and strategy.
Thanks, Amy. And would you mind introducing yourself? Because I had a couple.
Let's back up to the start. I'm Amy Oran, and I'm Vice President and General Manager at North Star, California, and I just passed the six-month milestone, so happy to be here.
Thank you.
Amy,
Talk to reservation.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up if I could. Could you talk a little bit about, I heard some numbers that you had provided us in a conversation about just the amount of regional visits, meaning people that are in the region that visit North Star, and how that has changed.
Yeah, certainly. So another just interesting shift in participation that we're seeing is, again, related to product strategy, is this year, out of the visitation that we added over prior year, 80% of it is regional. And, that's great. That's something that feels really good, because we can say those that are closest to our resorts are participating and they are experiencing our product. A lot of it is happening on midweek visitation. With that, while that's great, with that there is a little bit of a shift in trend where when it is more regional, there are less people that are staying on site in our lodging, and that is a car that is on the road. And that is also a car that typically has, lower occupancy per vehicle. And so that is, that's a trend we are seeing as well, with the increase in regional participation as opposed to destination, that's rubber traffic that is coming to our resorts. And so that's something that we are, in our future product strategy, driving, on-site occupancy is a big part of it, and continuing with just incentivizing non-peak.
Yeah, and part of the reason I shared those numbers about the growth in our drive-up region, because we all see those profound impacts, summer and winter, of the increased visitation we're seeing. Dee, did you want to address the management issue or reservation system?
We, Amy and I, were direct competitors, but we also cooperate to try to elevate the quality of the experience for all of our guests coming to Tahoe. And so while we don't often share strategy, we know we're having the same conversations. So I'm not going to repeat everything that she said, but we are absolutely very focused on our product strategy for access and for on-site management. And so with that, we started looking very seriously at park by reservation only, paid parking only, coupled with carpool, and all the other iterations that come with that, hybrid, so on and so forth. We tabled it because it's really sophisticated in Olympic Valley. It's not just a ski resort, right? It's a community. We have 2 schools. We have a post office. We have businesses that are outside the resort. We have commercial tenants inside the village. We have a lot of looky-loos. We have a lot of people coming into Olympic Valley just to hang out, see what there is to do. They're not coming skiing, right? So we got to think about access for all these different demographics, and so we're back at it again. We started the work again, and we are looking at very seriously at some blend of all of those parking types. As well, we are very seriously talking about capacity management and our access strategy, and that is also an annual conversation, and where are we going and what's in our future.
Thanks, thank you both. Two more questions I have. One is, with some colorful adjectives on here, Katie. Colorado is spending $700 million in infrastructure improvements to deal with ski traffic. Utah is spending $550 million on the same issue. Those two states with tremendous ski traffic. What is Placer County doing to match these efforts to address infrastructure shortfalls? Buses, that's all, question mark, question mark. And why did you wait till it was a crisis? So if there was anything I hoped I got across was we've been working on this for 40 years up here. And so I hope people heard that and know this is not simple. Secondly, I don't know the numbers offhand, but I think we can put together the many, many millions of dollars we have spent at Placer County on Tahoe City, Kings Beach, bike trails, $2.5 million out of general fund every year to augment our TART services, our TART Connect services at over $1 million a year. I'm dangerous here because I'm talking off the top of my head, but I think I'm close on all those. And that's on an ongoing basis. And we are looking at $200 million each for 89 and 267 as a very wild-ass guess on 89 and 267 of what it's going to take. So I think we're right in there. I did look at Park City's gondola. Many of you saw the NPR story. The longest gondola, I used to work at Snowbird, so I know very well what that traffic snarl is going up there. And it'll be interesting to see if they get that, because that's what you're talking about with a monorail. And many of us have talked about from 64 acres in Tahoe City and up to Scott Peak, and what could we do to be above ground. But then we have a lot of environmental concerns on any of these. So that's some of the answer. I don't know, Ken or Stephanie, if you want to jump in.
Yeah,
'cause you-
I can validate some of your numbers, and then I'll toss it to Ken.
I'm
So-
close, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it, supplementing base TART service, and this is the big bus. Roughly TOT budgets are roughly $4 million a year for that.
I was half.
Yeah,
so.
and in addition, the microtransit service on an annual basis costs us about $2 million. Now, that service is free, so we don't have any incoming fares or subsidies. So, just the TART system alone, we do budget roughly $6 million. And then I'll throw in the T-bid. The businesses have come to the table really self-assessing themselves on that, the additional $4 million that we have for housing and transportation. So it is a significant investment that the board does prioritize out of our TOT funds specifically for transit, on top of all the other things that Cindy mentioned. But Ken, do you have anything else?
I guess I'll just add, yes, there a tremendous amount of investment, but I think we've heard pretty strong since I've been here for 20 years about people aren't interested in just widening all our roads, whether they're around the lake or everywhere where they're at. They're looking for alternatives to that. We have spent a lot of money. Kings Beach Commercial Corps, $47 million. There have been huge investments. Trails, more trails than I've ever built in my life. And those and the ones even continuing on are going to be tens of millions of dollars more. It is a worthy of a community discussion if people want to see something different. But at this point, like I said, we're not looking at widening the roads for vehicles.
Okay.
And that's been a community discussion for a long time.
Thank you. So there has been a lot spent. I'm sure there's more, and love to hear the priorities from the community about what, if they don't want buses, how should we help solve this? And then finally, I had a suggestion about forming small groups to work on these issues. I would urge you to work with the MAC and the TMA and the existing groups, because we all go to a whole lot of meetings, and there's a lot of opportunity to participate. Stephanie has some questions from the survey, right?
Yeah, I do. Some of them have been answered, so I'll skip over those. But, just to highlight a question here on long-term, traffic impacts on the longer term. I think we highlighted that. Our long-term strategies here, I think we've been talking about all of that, so we won't go into detail on that. That dovetails into another discussion or question here that we have on just expansion and growth in the area. Again, those long-term plans are meant to anticipate that growth and potential expansion into the future. One question for you, Ken, effectiveness and kind of positive impacts that we're seeing on roundabouts out of the Tahoe City area with the Fanny Bridge Phase 1?
I think without a doubt, two things. First off, the roundabouts that allow traffic to keep flowing, but also allowing that traffic on the west shore that really doesn't want to go into town, that's looking to bypass town and go up to Truckee, doesn't need to go through town and gum up the Y, or at least not as much as it used to be. So I think that's a vast improvement, a huge improvement. So effective, I think net positive, big time. I would let everyone say for themselves, but I think, in my mind, a huge success.
Great. So next question, just kind of addressing something I hear frequently, low-hanging fruit being addressing parking. We've talked about parking management. Thank you, Dee, for recognizing your parking strategy. I have heard from Amy at North Star that they do also have a paid parking near the village strategy there. So a lot of effort going into parking strategy. This question specifically about parking minimums and maximums. I will say that conversation is definitely happening from a community development perspective in our Tahoe Basin area plan land use perspective. So next question, do we need state and federal assistance with transportation and pollution on our lake? I mean, I think the easy answer is absolutely. We are dependent on that to achieve the strategies in the regional transportation plan and the overall regional plan for TRPA. And I'm sorry if I'm speeding through these. I do want to give, interest of time, want to give some time for comment. So, how many more bigger TART buses could we pay for if we scrapped microtransit? So I think we've given the numbers on what what we're spending on the big bus, what we're spending on microtransit, so that can give you some perspective on those two. Let's see. A little bit of conversation, Ken, in here about the MPOs, so the Metropolitan or the Planning Organizations, SACOG, TRPA, Washoe County. How do those work together? I'll intro by saying, I think they're involved with the TMA. We have a lot of conversations with those organizations at the TMA level, but any other coordination that you might have?
And just maybe so people know, so local governments, a lot of federal and state resources that come through regions. And we here in the Tahoe area have a couple regions we're in. In the basin, you're in TRPA, most of you will know them. But as soon as you get outside the basin, Martis Valley, Olympic Valley basically, and even Alpine, that's the borderline, are actually in the SACOG or Sacramento area larger region. Does take coordination. I have been meetings up here. It's been a few years since we've had them, but the good news is it allows some resources and interest to come from a couple different directions, but it does require that much more coordination. We have more people involved. We also work with Washoe RTC because we provide some of the service actually into Incline, so there is a connection there also. Whenever particularly you're looking for federal and state sources, the more voices you add to the conversation, usually the louder you are, and that can be a positive thing. But it is much more work to get everyone in alignment as to what is the best course of action.
Okay, next question is on the TMA, so maybe I'll look to Steve on this one, but the question basically asks about the agency's involvement in the TMA. I can say from Placer County, town of Truckee currently chairs the TMA. Placer County has previously been the chair of the TMA, and we support the TMA financially as well. But Steve, do you want to give any color on that?
Sure. Thank you, Steve, to share for the record. So if you go on the TMA website, it shows you the 15 board members, but it is the local jurisdictions, it is citizens are on the board, all the resorts participate, North Star, Olympic, Palisades, everybody's on there, and so it's a real diverse group. We've got, again, citizens who care like you all do, who can serve on the board, and the meetings are open. Typically, they're hybrid meetings. They have been pretty much for a couple years now. So even if you're home and you don't want to travel to the site, you can participate in the meeting. So it's a good, diverse representation. We've expanded it over the last couple of years because more people, more seats on the board, more people want to be involved. So it's really good, and I think it's a great mix of public and private sector. And we have presentations like the ones you're getting tonight. And we hear on winter traffic management and summer issues. And there's a lot of things that go on where the TMA is sort of getting the presentation. So if you want an early orientation to a presentation, I mean, the Macs are great too, but we do have a lot of conversation. CHP comes to the meeting, Caltrans is often there, NDOT. It's a great mix, and I highly encourage you to participate. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Steve. So the next question is on, I think, messaging. The question is it possible to notify folks in the Bay Area or Sacramento and Reno that the traffic is bad? So maybe Dee and Amy, can you talk a little bit about your outreach strategy on visitors?
Thanks again. Yeah, so this is certainly, we have so many more channels to communicate with our guests in real time than we've had ever before. And, I think this is not only a resort strategy, but it's certainly a regional strategy. And, we connect through a lot of different committees and boards, and we talk ahead of time about what trends that we are seeing and how we can have the right balance of message, because I think there are times where we have gone a little bit too far of don't ever come to Tahoe or you'll die. I mean, it can get kind of extreme. And I think we found a really good rhythm and sweet spot of, especially when we anticipate, large visitation combined with large storms. And we are seeing a shift in people listening to that. I mean, we partner with CHP and Caltrans on their communication strategies so that we can be aligned in some of the message and the stories that we are telling, because I think it's really important that we don't over leverage to where people don't follow us with credibility. And I think that's a really important strategy that we have. But to Dee's point, she mentioned transparency, and I think that's something that we're all, feeling energized to see a shift in businesses, including the ski industry, and that we're trying to be really transparent with our story of it's going to take time to get up here, take time to travel, expect delays. I remember 20 years ago where it was, we had 4 inches of snow and we always called it 6 or 8. That's just what we did as an industry. And that kind of transparency, I think, is a really part of that credible message that we're telling our community.
I didn't do that because I didn't grow up in marketing like you, Amy, apparently. So similar story for us. We primarily use our web, our app, and Twitter. And Tom has been leading this effort at Palisades for over a decade, I think. Very, very important conversation constantly is what is that pre-messaging without scaring? And so, Tom, you want to make a couple comments on what you've seen over time?
Starting in, I guess, 2016-17, which I suspect a lot of you guys probably remember that season, we really took the tack that we needed to be just above board and transparent about everything we did. So really what we try to do each week ahead of the weekend is we come out on Thursday with an operating blog that gives you a sense of what's coming through over this weekend, what's the weather doing, what do we expect, and traffic, giving you some tips, get here early, all the things that we're talking about. We follow that up with social, and then one of the, as a couple people mentioned in here, one of our big, technology tools for communication is the app. And we set up certain geofences, so when you cross those, you get an automatic app messaging on if traffic's full, if traffic's not full, what to expect for the day. So we're trying to use all of these various communications channels to get to people in San Francisco, to get them as they're driving up, to get them when they're on 89. Additionally, we use KTKE for radio spots to talk about the traffic. So one of the things that we realize is sometimes on 89, as I'm sure many of you guys know, cell service is spotty, right? And so one of the ways that we wanted to get to them was through radio, because you can get radio all through 89. So we're using every single channel that we can possibly use to hit people before they leave, when they're making their decision to come, make sure they're educated on what it's going to be like, and then on the drive up and when they get here. So.
Great. Maybe I'll take a minute just to introduce, for those of you who don't know him, Adam Wilson with the North Tahoe Community Alliance. He was here. There he is. Their new COO just started on Wednesday. So North Tahoe Community Alliance, obviously, we've mentioned them a couple times, partners of ours from the business community. They are really a great asset and a tool for getting messaging out. They are the destination stewardship organization of the region, and so that's just another tool that we have.
Great.
Okay, I think I have just 3 more questions here. One question about rail transportation.
Good one. I was going to bring that up. We're
there-
doing a rail study.
Yes.
Yay!
Ken, do you want to talk a little about that?
I'm not sure how much to say, other than, there used to be rail service, way back when, down the 89 corridor. There's still a grade there. And so the thought, or at least in portions, and so the thought is, does it make sense? And what might it take to provide some sort of access along that route? That's another one of those longer-term strategies.
The shorter term, though, and just because county did invest money with PCTPA, and we are looking at more passenger runs up through Truckee to west to Reno. And so there is that study going on right now to put more passenger rail on the rail line. The biggest issue that we're different from Europe in that the government doesn't own those rail lines. Union Pacific owns those rail lines. And somebody earlier today, remind me who said, cows are more important than people. Freight is more important than people to Union Pacific. So we are doing our best to push on that. And I had meetings back in DC with Senator Rosen's office and Senator Mastro's office and said, please keep pushing from Nevada because they have a lot more influence right now than necessarily California. So they're working on it too. So we are working on rail.
Yep. Okay, 2 more questions here. So please address how the 3 lanes, so the transit lane on Highway 89, would affect residents along the river. Want to take that?
So the roadway would be 3 lanes. The center lane would be this reversible lane. There would be signage and maybe even some overhead to make sure the people who aren't supposed to be using it don't use it. It will not be blocked off physically, or at least not for most of the area, so we would have to provide left turn access to everyone along the river. Or at least I think that is the intent, because I don't see us making it right in, right out. That's not the intent right now. So you should have full access, but that will be developed through the study. And if there's any change to that, there will be a heck of a lot of discussion, because I'm sure there will be concerns about that.
Yeah, I was just going to follow that. A lot, the RTTP goes into kind of high-level strategy there. A lot of details, a lot of conversation still to be had on that one. And then the last one really talks about, a growing concern. Ken talked about this a little bit, but wildfire. How do we propose to? What are we going to do if there's a wildfire? So, I don't know if.
I think what we need to do on that one, just, we need to have CAL FIRE and our sheriffs here for that one, because they are in charge of evacuations and strategies. And unfortunately, I've been at both the River Fire and the Mosquito Fire and the Caldor Fire during evacuations and watched those operations. And I think it's highly informative to the public. So I hope we can maybe do a forum on that, since it comes up every meeting I'm at. So maybe leading into the summer, if that's okay, we'll save that one.
Absolutely.
For not today.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I will just say the last one is a question about emergency response. I've heard that a lot in the community, but how are we dealing with the need for potential emergency response during peak times? I know that I've talked to Dee a little bit about that. Do you want to talk about kind of the operation if there were to be an emergency?
Yeah, we work with Commander Edegee and his staff to make sure, and Chief Riley, to make sure that there's always that accessibility for emergency vehicle, and we've been successful in that.
Okay, and
So that's what I have online, so.
So one other question I think Who brought up capacity? Somebody brought up capacity and we didn't answer that. I want to let you know that I get to represent on both the Board of Supervisors, but also on the Tahoe Transportation District that did a study called One Tahoe, looking at charging people to come into our region. And with those funds, provide free transit and the transit lanes. That is an easy way. Thank you. Go talk to our governor. He doesn't agree with this, and both governors of both states, Nevada and California, said no, that we at TTD and TRPA couldn't talk about that. I'm not going to give that up, and with your support, we can keep pushing on that. Their concern is equity and access. We don't own Lake Tahoe, we don't own the Sierra, and we know the impacts. We're seeing those impacts. We've got to figure out ways to let them know that we want everyone to come, but they need to get out of their cars so that they're not an impact. And I believe strongly in the system is the answer that could really allow us to pay our own way to the future. But we're going to need help. So governors, if you're listening tonight, I'm sorry, but we need to meet. So.
Two pieces of information I think we have on the screen here. One is the results of the survey. The other was we were hoping to do just kind of a summary of what we heard. In the interest of time, Chairman, I'll look to you. We are happy to post that. Cindy can share that out through her
We can put it
channels
on the website.
Just in the interest of time.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because I think we do want to hear about next weekend and World Cup, right? 2 weekends, sorry, 2 weekends. Seems like it's next weekend. I can put it on the county. Should we put it on my website? So if you click on District 5, you'll see my face.
Yeah, we can put it there. We also
Sophie will put it up there for me because I don't know how to do it, but she'll get it done.
We also have a North Tahoe website too, so you can search North Tahoe and we can put it in both places just to cover that.
You can share it with the TMA. I'm sure they would put it on their website too.
Cindy, would we table item C for some other meeting? The roundabout? Yeah.
How many people are here about the Western Roundabout? Because if you've come and sat through all this time, we want you to hear the 10-minute presentation on that.
And maybe hands raised online if there's interest.
Yeah, are there any hands? So then we can. It's the Kings Beach Western Roundabout by the Brockway Golf Course, 267 and 28. Yeah. No, we're working on it. Should we talk about World Cup?
We can be quick. We can be quick. We're super excited. We're going to be hosting 28 nations, 106 athletes, a delegation of about 350 from around the world, and it's going to be awesome. And in terms of transportation management, et cetera, I'm going to turn it over to Mike because he and his team have developed a very comprehensive plan, and we are confident, based on our experience with the Women's World Cup in 2017, that we're going to be okay. You know, it's going to be busy, but I think we're going to be okay. And thank you, by the way. I know a lot of people have probably volunteered. Thank you very much. We couldn't hold this event without that, as well as the support from the county and the community. Mike Martin, VP of Base Ops.
Thank you, Dee. And I've got some slides put together. Quick intro. I'm Mike Martin, Vice President of Base Operations. I come tonight wearing my Palisades Tahoe badge and hat, but my other hat, because of the topic that we've been talking about tonight, traffic, transportation is a passion of mine. I'm the chair of the Mountaineer Transit Company Board, nonprofit funded via a TBID, self-imposed tax, if you will, that was recently renewed for another 5 years. It's a very similar microtransit program as TARC Connect. A lot of the topics that we talked about tonight are actually in these slides that I've got up, the county's going to run through for us. So I'm going to touch on them, try not to be too redundant. I'm not here to, it will be one heck of a party. Palisades Tahoe is pretty good at that, but what we're not always good at is informing the general community residents. I live here. That's why I serve on the Mountaineer Transit Company. I deal with the traffic. I have to take a kid to ski team or to school or into town to the grocery store. So I spend a lot of time. I'm looking over here at Mr. David Stepner, who's on the board with me. I'm not going to talk about Mountaineer Transit Company other than some additional ads that we're doing to support the World Cup event. So where do I point for that? There we go. So like we talked about tonight, and Ken did an amazing job, these are the core strategies that we go into an event like this with. Tom spoke about, the over communication and transparency. It's basically telling guests ahead of time how to plan, what to expect, and how best to engage with an event like this. Then you get into the traffic management and trip reduction. So that's, dealing with the guests and the traffic and the visitation as it's entering the region and ultimately in this case at Palisades Tahoe. Then some strategic initiatives around demand reduction. And then there's an exciting piece here through a partnership with TMA, NTCA, if I get that new acronym correct, and various other agencies that we're going to use to pilot and litmus test an initiative. And I'll reference that during the 2017 World Cup, there was a pilot litmus test via, at the time, a provider by the name of Chariot that spun the microtransit that is TARC Connect and Mountaineer Transit Company today. So we're going to try this thing out, and I'll speak to it in a little bit more detail here in a minute. See if we have some success with it, and potentially scale that, into the region for both North Star, Palisades, and the greater Placer County. So jumping into the next slide here, Tom spoke a little bit about this, but this over communicate and be transparent in how we do it. I've listed a few of the specifics that Tom mentioned here, but to catch those guests before they get in their car, when they're checking the app to see how much snow fell, what's going to be open, what are the conditions like, catch them early and often. I won't be too redundant to what Tom spoke to, but it's all real-time information. So that's a screenshot of our app that shows in real time what the parking lot status looks like, so that hopefully they can make a decision. We do have the CMS boards. Those are challenging, but they're valuable. That's an encroachment permit with Caltrans and Placer County. We deploy them. We want them out there, every single Saturday and Sunday or any special events like this. There are conditions that don't allow us to have them out there. If it's actively snowing and the plows need to be out plowing, we have to pull them. And sometimes it can be, 8 or 10 hours till we get them back out. Sometimes it can be, in these multi-day storm events, 3 or 4 or 5 days. The CMS boards, like to David's question, we send a car out. We know how many parking spots we have. We know exactly how many cars can be on between Olympic Valley Road and the Mouse Hole. We run a vehicle out. That messaging will flip at the furthest point, Deerfield Drive, where there's a CMS board. And to Dee's comment, it's amazing that people just ignore them, don't pay attention to them. They're lying to me. They're telling me, not to come. We toyed with some messaging. We're limited to the characters and the messaging by way of Caltrans, what we can put on there. But 2 of the Saturdays that D referenced, we put seriously all parking full, flash turnaround. And we still had cars showing up at the bottom of Olympic Valley Road saying, what do you mean you're full? Just a little bit of anecdotal, and CHP is out there with, and I've been out there the last several Saturdays, and maybe recognize a few faces out there in the crowd, we literally have to, you didn't see the sign, you didn't see the app push, you didn't hear the radio spot, you didn't get the text message, the alert, that just don't believe us. So back to Dee's comments about changing behavior. This gets into like the blocking and tackling, third lane operations, merge patterns, traffic light coordination with Caltrans. Commander Eggety and his team are amazing. We have a supplemental contract. It's usually on CHP days off that they're out there on the front lines with us, getting cars turned around, managing that traffic flow, and as Commander Eggety spoke to, trying new things a la West River, the roundabouts. We have our annual meeting and then multiple meetings throughout the season to adjust things that we're seeing, differences in traffic patterns, just the variability that is traffic management. And then specifically for World Cup, we're doubling down on those efforts with our internal staff, our licensed brokered traffic management group that we leverage. Their name's on there, Nevada Barricade, and CHP efforts, realizing that this event, falls at the tail end of what is already a busy ski visitation period in Ski Skate Week. Trip reduction. So this is, okay, the guests have made it here. They're staying in the valley. They're around the lake. They're at our resorts. How do we get them out of their vehicles? I've heard that mentioned several times by the agencies in the room. So this I'll tease. So we're going to be doing a park and ride solution out of both Truckee and Tahoe City. This is a joint partnership with NTCA, TMA, the TART service, and I'm going to speak a little bit more detail. It's like one of my last slides on this litmus or a pilot test that we're hoping to, one, learn something from, two, be successful and potentially scale and leverage going forward. Return of the Sherwood shuttle, so that's a park and ride type of location. Thank you to the county staff who helped us work through that to get the permit to operate that. I feel very confident that we're going to have that up in operation for this World Cup weekend to abate traffic coming from the West Shore. For those folks that don't know about that, that's essentially a park and ride from the West Shore over to the bottom of the Sherwood chairlift on the Ward Canyon side of Alpine Meadows to reduce that traffic coming around through Tahoe City. The parking for that will be at the Sunnyside Marina. We're currently working with them to make all those operational arrangements. So we're super excited to have that back in operation for World Cup. And again, it's been since I think sometime in the 80s when that was last run. So we're making some tweaks. We'll learn from that and again, hopefully look to scale that. Mountaineer and TART Connect, these are the two primary micro transit service here immediately in the North Lake region and into Olympic Valley with the Mountaineer Transit Company. We've added hours of operation on both of those services for World Cup weekend as early as 5 o'clock in the morning. I believe it's 5 or 6 a.m. for TART Connect, again, to try to get folks to use these feeders into Olympic Valley or feeders into the TART mainline system, especially in those early morning hours. They tend to be employees that are trying to get to work early, and we can take those cars off the road, take them out of the parking lot, and I'll speak a little bit more to that in a second. Promotional carpool parking, again, I was having a conversation right before the meeting started that during the pandemic, we saw, naturally, as you would think, a pretty significant reduction in the number of people per car, friends and outside of a family unit. We're starting to see a little bit of an increase back at the tail end or coming out of the pandemic, but we're still not where we were prior, and we're not where we want to be. So again, promotional carpool parking in terms of if you will, priority parking closer to the lifts, closer to the base area, by getting more people per car. Employee incentives, I'll speak to that in upcoming slide. Again, in partnership with TART and TMA, supplementing the TART headways with additional contract service for this World Cup weekend. So as Cindy mentioned, due to the current constraints of TART right now, their hour headways on the main line, we're going to have that down to 20 or 30 minutes for World Cup weekend, as early as 6 a.m. coming out of Truckee and 6 a.m. coming from Tahoe City Transit Center. And then the group that's the World Cup committee that's planning this was very methodical, very strategic in terms of concentrating the room reservations for our athletes, their teams, and even to a degree, people coming to spectate for the event. 2 hotels, either with existing shuttle service or where the resort will supplement shuttle service, again, to keep those cars off of the road. Sorry, I'm looking and talking in 2 different directions. Now, this is what I kept hinting at in the presentation for this park and ride. But the park and ride challenge, or park and ride was tried during the 2017 World Cup. It had some engagement, but not enough. if you think about it, we talked about it tonight, right? Your average guest, wants to get to the ski resort 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. Why would they, park their car, get out of the comfort of their own car to get on a bus to get in the same traffic that's out there on 89 or 267? So what we're going to do this year, because our employees are generally ahead of the opening of the ski resort and the guests out there on the road trying to get to the first chair at 9 a.m., Dee has been generous enough to, out of Palisades Tahoe pocket, incentivize our employees $25 per day, and then there's potentially some additional incentives on top of that if they carpool to the park and ride. And we've established the service provider in terms of TART, and to a certain degree TART Connect and Mountaineer Transit Company to feed those people up to the resort. We're super excited about it. It's going to be, it's a litmus test to see if that we can prove this concept out. Admittedly, Palisades Tahoe challenge right now with Park and Ride is where is a lot big enough that can handle 3 or 4 or 500 cars. For this pilot, we'll have 250 parking spots, give or take, between the transit center in Tahoe City and the high school in Truckee. Hence the supplemental initiative to get those employees to carpool together to the Park and Ride. The 3 buses that they'll be on will be like the 4 buses. The 6 o'clock, 6:30, we're going to supplement a 6:45, and then probably the 7 o'clock, and get those employees, to work, to the event before the traffic historically picks up in that 8 o'clock to as late as 2:30 in the afternoon that we've been seeing this season because of all the snow. And then, of course, Palisades Tahoe will be running some shuttles to supplement to North Lake and West Shore to assist guests that are trying to get here, but also assisting TART in terms of the challenges with the volume of employees that we're seeing this year, and then some of the challenges either weather-wise or driver-wise with TART. That slide came out a little fuzzy. And then in terms of peak demand reduction, this is now, okay, the guests they've been there all day. How do we slow that egress so that, I think as Ken mentioned, it's not everybody, the ski resort, the lifts are closed, there's nothing to do, and people are all hitting the road at 4 o'clock or 4:30. There's some exciting disco tubing events, so this is like to get families to stick around. It's lights and music and delaying that egress. There will obviously be 2 concerts or 3, Tom? 3 concerts. And we learned a lesson from the December 17th base-to-base gondola grand opening, where that concert was too close to the end of the ski day. And it drew an audience that in some cases was different than the ski population or the ski guests that were there for the day. So we have concerts planned that are much later in the evening in terms of 6:30 start, 7 o'clock start. Of course, they're over by 9 o'clock per permits and noise abatement for the Olympic Valley residents. We won't be going till the wee hours of the morning, but drawing that out so that we essentially don't have that mass exodus. And lesson learned from the base-to-base opening was we kind of had a concert crowd and a ski crowd all together, and we certainly learned from that and are applying the learnings to this year's World Cup. As I mentioned, expanded hours of operation, and new this year, this season, with our renewed Mountaineer T-bid is Inter-Valley microtransit via Mountaineer. So the gondola shuts down at the end of the ski day. Guests that are either staying or residents that are staying in Alpine Meadows or Olympic Valley, vice versa, will have the ability to get back and forth between the valleys without their vehicles until 10:30 in the evening. That was a huge service add this year with the renewed T-bid for Mountaineer Transit Company. So we're excited to see that play out in an event like this. Obviously leveraging the base-to-base gondolas strategically in terms of a transportation mechanism, in terms of folks coming from North Lake, West Shore, giving them the ability to park at Alpine, ride the gondola into Olympic Valley for all of the World Cup events and concerts, and then be able to return back via Mountaineer and vice versa. Dee has twisted our operations leader's arm on these busy periods to even run the lifts a little longer to help draw out that exodus of all the lift infrastructure going down right at 4 p.m. We've piloted that the last 2 weekends, Dee, 2 Saturdays, and we've seen an impact in terms of that exodus. And then the last 2 items there are really just focused around the employees in terms of getting them in early, out of that general population of traffic flow. So these would be, employees who have a shift that starts at 8:30 or 9 or 9:30. Is offering them a place, in this case, some coffee, some donuts, a place to hang out, be on their laptop, and get that general employee population off the road during these busiest times in the morning, in the afternoons. And I threw this in here. I've heard mention of it. What's old is new. The picture on the left is Olympic Valley Road. I got this picture from Eric Polson, circa 1950 or 51. In terms of that's what Olympic Valley Road looked like, before third lane and encroachment permits to widen it and some of these traffic control measures. So I heard Ken and others speak to the variability of the traffic and how just when you think you've solved it, something changes, which forces you to explore all options and make tweaks to improve it. The picture on the right is actually on the western slope, Cisco Grove, the Auburn Ski Club Hill, circa 1940. And as you can see, completely parked out with one car, driving through, figuring out where they're going to park. So I just put this in here, not to add insult to injury, not to belittle all of the efforts we spoke to tonight, but traffic has been a problem since 1940, and I'm sure even before. Not to call you out on age or anything there, Mr. Stepner, but it currently is, and this I just sat back here listening, and the partnerships in this room via TMA, Caltrans, the county, CHP. All of the various, NTCA, the list goes on and on. And speaking for Palisades Tahoe, we deeply appreciate, we deeply need those partnerships and the collective input from the community to keep it advancing, evolving, finding solutions that will make life easier for all the folks that are fortunate to live and work here in the basin, and equally importantly for all the guests that like to come, recreate, support our businesses, pay taxes and T-bids and TOT and all the funding mechanisms that help us advance these things. So, like I said, I came across these in archives and conversations with folks that have been around a lot longer than me in the area. And I'd like to think at the end of the day, we're evolving, we're improving. We have things like TARC Connect, Mountaineer Transit Company, potentially trying pilots on third lane down, Highway 89 and some of the things that we've talked about here today. So, like I said, I wasn't here to advertise. It will be one heck of an experience, having some of the world's best skiers here in our backyard and the ability to participate, spectate, music, and get out on the hill. I think that's a common thread in this room in terms of outdoor recreation, specifically skiing and riding. And so we're super excited to host it. At the same time, we want to do it in a responsible manner for the community that we all live in. Thank you for your time, and we certainly can field any questions, but want to be respectful of time and agenda.
Thank you very much. So the last item is public comment, but again, related to this topic. And normally we would limit it to 3 minutes, but considering it's 10 of 9, we will limit it to 2 minutes. So please keep it short.
And maybe I'll just say before we go there, recognizing that we do have comments that have come in through the survey as well. We have about 50 comments that we've captured through the survey. So if you're online, just know that we've captured those comments and we will be collecting those and providing those comments, so.
Hi, everyone. Gavin Lura, lifelong Squaw Valley resident, former manager of Mountaineer, actually, as well. I wanted to actually ask Mike, Martin, and the guy that's with CHP, I wonder if it's been considered how much it incapacitates Mountaineer to operate, having the turnaround be at the post office. It doesn't work anymore. You can't take it anywhere. So something to consider, maybe having that as a secondary turnaround or also having one at the fire station. I understand the fire station turnaround has its advantages. And then second, the lot that's currently used for snow storage across from the fire department, has it been considered packing that down and maybe using that for parking possibly during the event, and maybe running a shuttle taking people just to Squaw Creek? That actually, if that lot was able to be utilized, I mean, I don't know if that needs a whole EIR, who knows, but then you could possibly park as many cars there as could be on Squaw Valley Road all the way to the post office. So those are my thoughts.
So with the Mountaineer, yes, we've observed that with the checkpoint further up, providing the benefit of keeping 89 free and moving, that it has had an impact with the Mountaineer vans. But hopefully you've seen out there during those time periods where we have the turnaround, where we've got staff that will bring the Mountaineer through and allow them to make the turns, and they are allowed to drive into the neighborhood because they're picking up residents and bringing them down into the resort or the village or to work or to many of the purposes served. So we're looking at that to answer your question in terms of, how can we navigate the Mountaineer in a similar fashion that we navigate the emergency vehicles, the ambulance calls, the fire trucks, the CHP cruisers, and the sheriffs. So it's a very valid point that you raised. And then on the parking, yes, we are parking we call them the icebergs at the ski resort. There's one next to the OVL building. We're in the process of reshaping the one at the east end of the property to allow parking, supplemental parking for an event like this, and potentially on busy Saturdays as well. The lot across from the firehouse is sensitive environmental. The Olympic Valley Creek runs along the back side of that. We have the necessary best management practices in place to store snow there, but offering that as general vehicle parking, it doesn't have, drainage and sand oil separators and some of the more stringent requirements for parking vehicles. So it's a very good and creative suggestion. We're doing that in other areas on the property, and we can probably commit ourselves to looking at and exploring what it would take to be able to park cars on that lot across from the firehouse.
Introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name is Andrew Hayes. I'm a resident of Olympic Valley. I'd like to thank everyone here for their time. This has been a wonderfully informative presentation, and it's been great to hear the county pat itself on the back for all the hard work they've done. But everyone came here tonight because these measures have been inadequate. They have failed. We are now at a crisis point. For too long, we have bowed to the pressures of the resorts and to the stakeholders, to use a favored term. In 2016, the county accepted the EIR, which said that the parking would be parked out on 4 days per year. At the time, that projection seemed laughable. Now it seems almost criminal. Cindy discussed the shifting dynamics in our commuters, people coming from Reno, as if it's some sort of mystery. At every stage, the county has failed to implement restrictions on short-term rentals. When employees cannot live proximate to their jobs, it creates traffic. We cannot find bus drivers because there is nowhere to live. Secondly, I've listened to this entire presentation, and there's one major thing missing, and that is holding these resorts accountable. Listening to it, the present strategy seems to revolve around signs, which are clearly not working. Dee herself said that they can't control these people. If you own a bar that causes a constant public nuisance, you lose your liquor license. Until we come up with a way to compel these organizations to fix these problems, they will not be active parts of the solution. We as a community need to come up with acceptable measures, and if these measures are not met, there needs to be financial penalties. Otherwise, this will not change. When the product strategy is to oversell passes and to incentivize people to purchase their day tickets weeks in advance, they're clearly not going to turn around. Finally, when it comes to paid parking, I know they have that at North Star. I predict it will come to Palisades Tahoe. We need to make sure as a county that we place some sort of assessment on those fees so that this does not just become a financial windfall for these organizations that have created the problems, so we can take that money and put it directly into real solutions. Thank you very much.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Katie Hoversmoot. I am also a resident of Olympic Valley, and I want to ask, first of all, what are we doing here? Look around. Most of the public has already left. None of us want to be spending our Thursday night here. I'm furious, actually, that I have to be here and not at home grading the assignments of your children or making dinner or walking my dog. But I'm here because Placer County continues to offer us incremental solutions to major problems. In fact, those of us in this room who work full-time in our community, you're making our continued presence here nearly impossible. You want local teachers? You want bus drivers? You have a 56% gap in the number of bus drivers you need. You cannot continue to make this community unfunctional. You have to make the situation livable. How many of you need to use the weekends to run your errands? Some of you, certainly, right? Not all of you are retired. Some of you work midweek and you have to leave your homes to go to the grocery store. Now imagine you are unable to leave your home during those free days. Imagine hundreds of cars, additionally, streaming onto your neighborhood streets, killing dogs, getting stuck, blocking the fire truck. Would you stay in that community? No, you wouldn't. You would leave, particularly when the only option offered to you is signage. Thanks for those, by the way. The signs, no people, just signs. Great job, like buses instead of major infrastructure solutions. Placer County is not equipped to deal with the current regional growth or help residents, but they are, as always, prepared to approve continued development which will compound the issue. I'm repeating what Andrew Hayes already said, but the 2016 Squaw Valley EIR stated that parking was sufficient for all but the 4 peak days, which were, quote, atypical. This year alone, there have already been 18 days, according to your Twitter, that there has been no parking available at Palisades Tahoe. Now, atypical is every weekend. So, anyways, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Moores. I'm with Sierra Watch and the campaign to keep Tahoe Truckee true. And I do want to thank you for holding this meeting tonight, but mostly I do want to thank the folks who have come out and have stuck around. It is asking a lot for people to sit here for 3 hours and then not have a chance to be heard until 3 hours later. So thank you, people, for coming. I'm here to remind everybody of the rule of holes. So they say when you're in a hole, the first rule is to stop digging. In other words, stop making the problem worse. Ken talked a few hours ago about how can we do things to make things better in the future, and I really appreciate that point of view. But the bad news, as previous speakers have mentioned, is that Alterra is development proposal would make things a lot worse. It would add 3,000 new daily car trips, which Chair Stepner has given a very vivid depiction of how many cars that is. If it's 2,500 from the Mouse Hole to Olympic Valley, that's a lot of cars to add to our traffic mess. Obviously, this is a problem for anybody who wants to run an errand, somebody who has to get to work, or a parent who wants to get their kid to the ER. It's much more than just a nuisance, or even much worse than just how it impacts the visitor experience that we're so committed to in this region. But it could also be deadly too. And if you think about how hard it is to get everybody into Olympic Valley on a day in the winter, what about that day in the summer when there's a wildfire and everyone has to leave at the same time? The county's own environmental review said it would take more than 11 hours to travel 3 miles from the resort to 89, which is at level of service F, or as we know it, gridlock. That's not planning for a disaster, that's planning a disaster. I don't know if my 2 minutes are up or my 3 minutes is up. It seems like a small amount of time compared to 3 hours, but I will wrap up with one interesting factoid and then a very sincere request. And the interesting factoid is, if you had a race between an evacuee who was fleeing wildfire in Olympic Valley and a turtle and a snail, the evacuee would come in second. That's how slow that would be. And the request is, I really think we can all do better. I mean, again, I appreciate people coming together tonight to deal with this. And I think if we had the same kind of spirit to come together and pursue a collaborative plan for the future of Olympic Valley that's different than the outdated project that was proposed more than 10 years ago, we could do a lot for this region, and Tahoe deserves no less. So thank you.
Hello, thank you. Adam Wilson with the North Tahoe Community Alliance. Thank you all for the information. I think there was a lot of really good information here, and I think I learned a lot too. Of course, this is day 2 of my role, so I'm excited to learn more. I also do know there's a lot of collaboration, and it's not just Placer County. It really is a lot of agencies, and I know it's hard sometimes. It's easy to point a finger at Placer County, but I do believe that you've got the North Tahoe Community Alliance, you've got the businesses that have self-assessed them, you've got all of these people here that are volunteering, you've got all of this great energy up here that's volunteering their time. Let's work together. Steve Teixeira said it really well. There's opportunities to have input and be part of these things, and I know it's hard sometimes, but let's take the time and try to provide constructive conversations and work towards that. And I just thank all the people who have put a lot of energy towards this, and I know everybody wants to make it better, and I do too. So thank you.
Okay, I just have to. My boys are making me for sure speak. My name is Sarah Lawis. I've lived here longer than even Cindy. Our kids have grown up together here. I'm a nurse also, both here in Truckee as well as in Reno. So I know what craziness is going on with our local healthcare systems, with the growth in the region, in Tahoe, in Reno, and we service all the way to Mammoth Mountain. So we are impacted. Our ERs are splitting at the seams. There's no beds. That's a whole nother story, but really all I wanted to say in the 1 minute you might give me is I feel like the elephant in the room has been skirted around. That's capacity. That's the resorts, ticket sales, and I appreciate the fact that you're not really able to speak to that. I totally get that. And I appreciate a couple of the comments you've made, Dee, especially about that you're being transparent and considering where the future is going with this, and it's obviously not in your hands alone because of it being a corporate thing, and it's happening all over the country. But for our region, for everything everybody's talked about tonight, there is capacity. We cannot keep going with the product strategies and expect that we're going to build our way out of this. The geography prevents development. We already have umpteen developments in the works for the North Tahoe region, be it the boat works, the hotel, Homewood, Biltmore, on and on it goes. Everything to bring more visitation here on top of peak issues that we all came here tonight to talk about. So I just hope there will be more focus on capacity. That's all I have to say.
Hi, guys. I'm JD Haas from 101.5 Truckee Tahoe Radio. Thank you for recognizing those people who've died. I've been behind the microphone at the radio station for 19 years. We've lost our children. We've lost teachers. We've lost our friends on 267 and 89. They all land on my desk at the radio station, and it's a very sad thing that happens. And it's got to change. Something has to change, because it's a very scary place to be on those roads. Thank you for allowing us to be your voice, turn traffic around. And for my listeners and everybody else, when you do hear that message and you turn around in 89, you got to stop and you really need to think twice. That's a highway when you're turning around. You please, we've been to memorials. So I'm trying to do my part here as owning the radio station and making this happen. So with that, heed that. Now, I know Mayor OVMAC is on Zoom right now, and our town manager, Jen Calloway, she left with EIO OVMAC. They were here listening, and the conversation is much larger than just a couple of minutes we can have here with the public. You talked about the triangle. You need to include Truckee within that triangle, make that discussion happen, and work together as one. Because I can tell you last Sunday, my family was trapped in our home in Truckee too, in the Armstrong tract. We can't leave there either. So it's not just there, it's at home too in Truckee. And so we stayed home all day on Sunday because we couldn't leave because of traffic. And there's got to be a different way. Very quickly, I'm just going to give you a quick history of what I've seen. I've seen the urbanization of Truckee happen, where number one, they've put in the roundabout. They've changed the ag station. They've put in center dividers. They've created pedestrian areas for traffic. It has reduced the flow of traffic and increased pedestrian safety in our community, which that was their goal. But what it has also done, it has also created a level of traffic that Truckee has never seen. And everybody has their stake in this. And be very prepared. West River Street is changing. You've talked about it. That's another thing that's changing. And I sat through 27 hours of the 2040 general plan and listened to it, and I was there every day in that hall. That's changing, folks. So West River is not going to be an option. You need to look at the engineer there too, because that is being drawn down to reduce the flow of traffic. It's already approved and voted on. Traffic will be reduced. Flow of traffic will be reduced. We're going to lose corridors throughout. I'm JD Haas. I thank everybody for participating. And please remember, if you turn around on 89, 267, when you hear that call, we've lost many people. So thank you for recognizing that. I appreciate that.
Anybody else?
And we have about 5 online.
Hey, my name is Jeff Akimian. My wife and I moved to Olympic Valley 19 and a half years ago. Just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's really nice of you to take all the heat, take all these hard questions from everyone. Just 2 things I'd like to bring up because I'm tired. First is I'd love to see Altera, and I don't know what it is, but with the cell phone towers in Olympic Valley on the busy days, and it's even on the weekdays now. We go into SOS mode. Can't make phone calls, can't get texts. I know that because my daughter was in the hospital having surgery, and my wife couldn't tell me what's going on. Really love to see that happen. Second thing is, City of Bolinas, years ago, did a moratorium on all new developments because they couldn't handle development. I'd love to see our area put a complete moratorium in the Tahoe Basin until we figure out the traffic crisis. That's all I got.
Howdy. My name's Paul Miller. I live in Homewood. I just want to say that thanks for everybody being here. But your new proposal confuses me because you're gonna remove all your your new Squaw Valley, Olympic Valley proposal confuses me because you're gonna remove a lot of the parking and add a lot more people. Traffic's gonna be worse. And then I know a lot of people in the beginning of this meeting spoke about Homewood, and they were sad that Homewood's gonna be gone. Homewood specifically said they were closing their business because their business was being shut down by your business and all the traffic. And so I hope you guys realize that you're just kind of pushing this around. No one's solving anything. You still can't get from Homewood to Truckee on a Saturday. You can't do it. Yeah, you can't go to Reno. You can't run errands. You are locked into your house. You better plan ahead because all you guys want is more people stuck on the road so you can put them in, hang them in the air and sell them hot dogs. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for this forum. My name is Alyssa Morganti. I've lived in North Lake Tahoe for 25 years. I have a few ideas that you can take or leave, but they seem to be solutions that could be viable more quickly than a third lane or a widening of a highway. One, a ski team bus. Palisades could provide buses, 2 in each town, 2 in Truckee, 2 in Tahoe City, 1 to each mountain, 1 to Alpine, 1 to Squaw. You don't need a parking lot because there's no parking. Parents would be dropping off their kids for ski teams. The transit center could be a drop-off place in Tahoe City. The Save Mart parking lot on either end of 89 or the rec center in Truckee. 7:30, drop your kids. That would eliminate hundreds of cars. I personally sometimes have to drive to both mountains because I have kids in ski teams that ski at either Olympic Valley or Alpine. It would eliminate a lot of cars, and people put their kindergartners on buses to go to school, so I believe it would be okay to put your kids on a bus to go to ski team. Solution A. Solution B would be, and I know this isn't quite as popular, but when I first moved here long ago, you could go to the county office and get a local sticker so that if 80 was closed, they would allow you access to get home, get a Tahoe local sticker. So we could, similar version to that, you would have to show that you have a job and a house here, not just a house. And from 6:45 to 8:15 on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday mornings, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday morning, it could be local only access on 89. So you're not closing the highway, you're just having restricted access to the highway, which I know closing the highway there's some legalities, but it could be a restricted access, so you can get to work. I work at the mountain on the weekends, and I frequently am late because I'm sitting in traffic, leaving my house at 7 and can't get there by 8:15. Am I out of time?
Yeah.
Last quick one, passes. There's tiers, right? There's a full pass, and then there's a blackout on holidays pass. There could be a 9 to 1 pass, where your pass shuts off at 1. So in the afternoon, people aren't all leaving at 4. People are leaving earlier. Or a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or midweek only pass, which also used to be a thing, which no longer is. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
Okay, online. We're going to go to those of you online, and we have Nicole Hull. Would you want to unmute and speak?
Yes. Thank you, Alyssa. This is Nicole Hull's partner, Stephen Kirk. Born and raised local. I guess we have limited time. But one thing I'd like to address that would really severely could affect the flow of traffic is the short-term rental companies need to address their renters during snowstorms and severe weather warnings. They need to not evict their tenants from their short-term rentals. I'm seeing severe clogging in the local neighborhoods here, and as all these people from out of town that, bless their hearts, are just completely innocent to it, but they don't know how to drive in the snow, and they're telling me they're leaving we're going home, but the summits are closed. So we need the short-term rental agencies to give these disclaimers that they need to stay put and not leave their homes. The rentals, right? These people that have never been to Tahoe, never been in the snow, the rental's done, and so they need to leave. That's something that I'd love to address. Secondly, it pains my heart to say it, but I mean, could we get a Tahoe City Truckee bypass, locals only, from Burton Creek down the 06? I like the dude with the gray beard to the right. You know, drastic measures cause for drastic circumstances. It's a possibility. And you know, the ski traffic has always been a thing. And my heart goes out to the new owners of Squaw Valley and the Palisades. You're inheriting a shit show. Pardon my French. Pardon my French. But and you know, make Squaw great again. Make Alpine and Palisades or Alpine and Squaw competitors again. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
Jeffrey, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Jeffrey Thorsby. I am the Senior Management Analyst for Nevada County Board of Supervisors Office and work directly with Supervisor Hardy Bullock. I just want to say thank you to Placer County Supervisor Gustafson and the MAC members for coming out tonight, and also thank you for the community members. And just want to articulate Nevada County's stands in support for regional support efforts to help this issue, to stand with our partners in Truckee. Supervisor Bullock and myself, we headed to Washington, D.C. this weekend for the National Associations of Counties, and this is really eye-opening and helpful, and so we'll be carrying on this message to help and partner with Placer County and to look for solutions. So I just want to say thank you so much for this very informative meeting. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Raina Harris.
Hi, my name is Raina Harris. Thank you so much, everyone, for speaking. It's been really enlightening. I'm a professor in biology, but I'm also a parking attendant at Alpine, and a resident of Alpine Meadows. And when parking is under capacity, when there's spaces available, people in town behave. The roads are clean. People park where they're supposed to park, and it's a lovely place to work. It's a lovely place to be. When parking is over capacity, it's really unpleasant. And like you said, I think the comment that stuck out most is that people don't believe the signage. There's signs that say it's full. There's an app that says it's full, and people don't believe it. I think one tiny thing that could help, webcams are amazing. The webcams, the traffic cams, help you see that the traffic's bumper to bumper. The ski cams help you see that there's ski lines or that there's people on the mountain or not. If we could have some parking cams, people could see it and for a fact know that the parking is full, and it wouldn't have the human delay of a human having to tweet that the lot's full or a human having to change the CMS board. If there was some traffic cams in our parking lots, I think it could help really illustrate the message that we really are full. But I want to reiterate what everyone has said. Capacity is huge, and I think capacity is the main problem, and these are all Band-Aid solutions to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Wexler? Ryan Wexler?
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Ryan Wexler, Kings Beach. First, I'll try to limit my comments, but first, I'm from Kings Beach. I hope we can reschedule the KB roundabout discussion. It's a separate discussion anyways, I understand that. Two big problems we are having, housing and traffic, and they're both connected. A big step towards solving this would be requiring those resorts and large organizations to build their own employee housing on site. And when I say on site, I mean on their property. D, from Palisades is here. D, consider how many years now you guys have struggled with staffing issues. If you had on-site housing for employees, it'd be easier to find employees, it'd be easier to get them there on time, it would reduce traffic, and it would allow more room for revenue creating, tourists or whoever in your parking lot. I don't see any negatives. Placer, why aren't we requiring this? I don't think the resorts will do it unless forced. Let's talk about this. I suggest we don't let the resorts develop another building, even repaint a building until they do this. I'll happily make zoning exceptions for dormitory style housing at Palisades and North Star. And by the way, Placer County, you should do this too. Why don't we have on-site full-time housing for TART drivers on your property? Third lane discussion. I think the danger here, as the gentleman talked about, the mouse hole metering traffic, we lose the metering of traffic if we do this. And so we have people coming in too fast. Squaw Valley Road will back up even faster. So I hope you guys look at that. I'll try to limit that. Last thing I'll just say in reference to the person who spoke earlier, the parking lot attendant, Raina. I think we should also give some support to this underappreciated group. These parking lot attendants, I deal with them very frequently. I personally interact with the Palisades guys, especially Mike and his crew at Alpine Meadows. And this is a conscientious, kind group of young men and women who display a degree of patience in the face of an endless stream of angry people that I can't personally imagine being able to do. So if you guys see these people, recognize the kind of hell they're dealing with and appreciate them.
Good job,
Thank you.
Brian. Thank you. Ann Nichols.
Hello, yeah. What struck me about this meeting tonight, beyond the fact that it was poorly planned, there was too much on the agenda, and, it should have been split up, is that it seems the ski areas have created a monster. It's out of control. They don't know how to control it. They can't control the number of people. They've sold almost 1 million passes. They have no idea how to stop this or control it. It's just, it's real sad. And, you talk about your product. Tahoe is not a product. Truckee is not a product. And I'd love North Star to tell us how many passes they've sold. That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Doug Flaherty.
Thank you. Doug Flaherty, TahoeCleanAir.org, retired fire battalion chief who lived and worked in the Santa Ana Canyon in Orange County, and personally been involved with many evacuations, very tragic, during wildfire. The elephant in the room is actually increases in capacity, which are causing demonstrated public safety peril gridlock, especially with regards to wildfire. The issue was swept under the rug tonight when it was brought up. You know why? Because the 40-year bureaucrats, and I'll speak fire talk here, the 40-year bureaucrats know that this group, if they demanded a supplemental EIR or EIS for the TRPA regional plan, for the Placer County TBAP, and for the Placer County general plan, which had to include a workable public health and safety wildfire evacuation and winter public safety assessment, would put an end to all of this. They know that. I encourage all of you, demand it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Angela, you're our last speaker.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks so much for the conversation and the opportunity to come forth in support of these different solutions being discussed. I have a quick list, just gonna go through it quickly. Echoing concerns about safety and access for locals and priority commerce trucks. When we're talking about HOV lanes or an extra lane, I think this idea of a local priority pass is going to be really important to consider. Echoing concerns around any tolls around equity issues. So I'm glad that that's being discussed and taken into consideration. So thank you for that. In favor of buses and park and rides. Former speaker mentioned, in the Truckee area, kind of Save Mart area. Thinking that's a really great idea. Again, concerns about safety. And then touching back on some comments related to traffic, related to local workers, and equally staffing issues because of housing, people have to find in other cities to work locally. In favor, again, echoing the need for local on-site housing by the resorts to ease a lot of those concerns. Lastly, on signage and messaging, I agree that there's good, web access to Palisades Twitter ops, and that seems helpful. In terms of mitigating day trip, notifications on the actual people, for people who are on the road and already driving. Messaging currently is not sufficient. It's not sufficient when you get to the valley. It needs to be in Truckee. It needs to be on 80 before Truckee. Frankly, I think it needs to be down in Auburn. I can't imagine it's too expensive to put up some kiosks with traffic times and parking in 5 or 6 places up along the way. Give people opportunity to turn around even before they come through the Stormy Pass. I think we could head it off way sooner, even just based on messaging. We've seen in Truckee, in addition to adding roundabouts to improve flow, that in some of our problematic intersections, increasing messaging, the one, downtown by the train tracks, that oncoming traffic has the right of way has
Angela,
significantly improved.
I'm sorry, Angela, can you wrap up?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we had one more hand raised, and that's Shauna Mayo.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So my first comment is obviously you guys have stated previous in this meeting that you guys have talked about these issues for years. That it's been going on and it's a continuous problem, and yet I have not seen any action other than adding more roundabouts and a possible talk of a third lane. In regards to staffing, who wants to come and work jobs that pay barely enough to survive, and then have to come to work hours early and get home hours late for no pay? Then you incentivize those individuals to come even earlier with some coffee and donuts. Wildfire, that concern can be discussed at another time. If you would have saw what happened at Paradise, you may have the same opinion that I do. Resort capacity. Your businesses, Palisades, failed another, Homewood. There needs to be capacity limits. Look at Sugar Bowl, for example. Use that. They limit their day tickets as well as their season passes, and it works. It offers that epic experience or that moment that you hope people will have when they come to Tahoe. So I ask you, instead of talking about what you may do, I think it's time to figure out actually what we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. Great. So that's all the public comment we have, and I think I can also follow up with a couple items that came in on questions cards. One was, when will we hear Homewood? I'm not related to the traffic. The emergency evacuation, we will agendize. I'm not brushing it under the table. We just don't have all the experts here to talk about that, and we've been here 4 hours, and that's probably a 4-hour conversation too. So we'll get there. And then I had a comment on broadband cell service being an issue for phones, which I think we heard again. And then the Palisades development, we had a couple comments on Palisades development, which is another process. So thank you.
That wraps up the meeting. I appreciate everybody's patience in sitting through this. I think we learned a lot, and I thank the guests that came and talked to us. They volunteered their time as well. So everybody, please drive safe.